What if? What if the way we've all been taught to improve our work is actually destroying our best ideas?
Oh, man, that is a heavy question.
I know, right? But think about it. We're taught that improvement comes through tough love, the dreaded red pen, and just relentless, brutal criticism, and it burns us out.
It completely burns people out. I mean, we've all endured it.
Exactly. You pour your heart into a project, right? You hand it over, and you just get a document back that's bleeding with track changes and like really vague complaints.
At worst, make it pop.
Right, make it pop. But today, we're doing a deep dive into a system that actually bans criticism entirely.
Banning criticism. It sounds impossible, but it works.
It really does. So today we are exploring the introduction and the first chapter of a book called Copy Logic. And you're about to discover why the traditional, agonizing method of evaluating work is basically a prehistoric trap.
Literally prehistoric, as we'll see in a minute.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to unpack how a completely criticism-free system can turn mediocre writing into breakthrough sales copy and do it in a fraction of the time.
Which is huge.
It is. For anyone listening, if you're running a business, leading a team, or just creating anything of value, understanding this shift is the ultimate shortcut. It helps you evaluate ideas faster, boost team morale, and ultimately drive massive profits.
I'm so excited to get into this because it really is a radical departure from the norm.
Yeah.
I mean, we practically idolize the demanding boss who tears everything apart.
We really do. We have this cultural conditioning that says if a review process doesn't hurt at least a little bit, it just isn't rigorous enough.
Right. No pain, no gain applied to office work.
Exactly, which is such a bizarre psychological quirk when you really pause to think about it.
Right.
And to illustrate just how bizarre it is, the book kicks off this amazing reality check from the Stone Age.
Oh, the fable. I love this part.
It's so good. It's a fable about a caveman copywriter named Rex, and he lives in the village of Ood.
It's such a brilliant way to disarm the reader, framing our current feedback systems as literally primitive.
It really sets the stage. So Rex needs work to feed his family, right? So he goes to the tribal leader, this guy named Chief Humongous.
Great name.
The best. And the chief gives him an assignment that is going to sound uncomfortably familiar to anyone working in marketing today. He tells him to beat the control.
Basically just write a better sales message than the one we currently have.
Right. But when Rex asks for some direction, like, what are we looking for here? Humongous just glares at him and says, "Tell of my greatness. It is your job to know."
Wow. The ultimate unhelpful creative brief.
Oh, totally.
I mean, the leader demands greatness but provides absolutely zero direction. It places the entire burden of, clairvoyance onto the creator.
Right out of the gate, Rex is set up to fail. So he goes back to his cave. He spends 6 weeks scratching out praises on stone tablets.
Literal heavy lifting.
Yeah, and he brings them back. Humongous reads them, smiles, and says, "Good." However, there are just a few things I think you should change.
And here we go.
And as he gives his suggestions, Humongous literally hits Rex over the head with a wooden club.
It's funny, but it's so accurate. It's a physical manifestation of the modern critique.
Yeah.
Every strike of that club is a red line on a Google Doc.
That is exactly what it is. So Rex is bleeding, he's confused, he asks why he's being beaten, and Humongous tells him, "How can you expect to be a great copywriter without a good clubbing now and then?"
Classic.
But the wildest part isn't even the chief. It's the chief's counselors. They're all standing around applauding.
Oh, the counselors, yes.
They tell Humongous his advice is incredibly wise and that Rex should be, thanking him for this brutal lesson.
Let's actually look at the psychology of those counselors for a second, because they represent the toxic echo chamber of traditional corporate hierarchy.
Oh, totally. Expand on that.
Well, they have essentially equated suffering with value.
Yeah.
In their minds, the harsher the feedback is delivered, the more valuable and true they perceive it to be.
That makes so much sense. So Rex goes home, nurses his wounds, makes all the changes, and brings the tablets back. But Humongous is out of the office.
Of course he is.
Right. Instead, he meets the chief counsel, this guy named Fastidious. Fastidious reads it, says it's good, but
Chucker, it needs changes.
It needs changes. So Fastidious gives Rex a 6-hour clubbing session, completely reversing everything Humongous just had him do.
Which highlights the sheer subjectivity of this entire review process.
Yeah.
I mean, the feedback isn't based on an objective measure of what works. It's based entirely on the arbitrary whims of whoever happens to be holding the club that day.
Exactly. It's maddening. So fast forward 6 months. Rex has been beaten back and forth, making all these contradictory changes. His family is starving.
It's getting dark.
It is. And finally, they declare the copy finished, but only because Humongous is just too tired to swing the club anymore.
Not because the copy is perfect,
Yeah.
just fatigue.
Right. And here's the kicker. They never test the copy. Months pass. They kill the project because it, quote, took too long.
Unbelievable.
And then they hire a new copywriter.
Yeah.
Why? Because the new guy takes his beating well.
Ouch. That punchline hits hard. The organization has completely lost the plot at this point.
Totally lost it.
They're no longer valuing the quality or the effectiveness of the work. They are evaluating a creator's capacity to endure organizational abuse.
Wow. Yes. And Rex realizes there is zero correlation between how hard he was beaten and the actual performance of his work. So he just tells his sons, go be fishermen instead.
Smart move.
Seriously. But okay, let's unpack this for the listener, because obviously nobody is actually getting hit with a wooden club today.
Hey.
But doesn't this perfectly describe the modern corporate review process?
Oh, 100%.
The club is just a track changes document full of red ink from middle management.
It's just sanitized for the modern office. Yeah. The authors are isolating a deeply flawed assumption that permeates the business world. And that's the idea that suffering is a prerequisite for quality.
Right. We think it has to hurt to be good.
Exactly. We have this romanticized notion of the tortured genius or the hard-nosed editor who breaks a writer down just to build them back up. But as the fable points out, the beatings didn't make the copy better.
No, they didn't.
They just made the process agonizingly slow and drove the actual talent out of the industry entirely.
I want to push back on this a little bit, though, because as much as we all hate the club, I bet a lot of people listening might be thinking, well, my boss's red ink actually made me a better writer.
That's a fair point.
Right. And the book actually transitions from the caveman fable to the real world. Author Michael Masterson talks about his own mentor, a guy named RJ, back in 1978.
Ajay. Masterson spent a week writing this 4-page sales letter, and RJ handed it back with a note that literally just said, your writing stinks.
RJ tore it apart line by line, ridiculed him, called it tough love. And honestly, a lot of very successful people point to a mentor exactly like RJ and say, you know what? That trial by fire made me who I am today.
It's true. Many successful people survive that system. But the key word there is survive.
Revived, okay.
The authors are asking us to separate the survival from the system itself. Did RJ's method work because it's the optimal, most efficient way to produce great copy?
Probably not.
Right. Or did Masterson just happen to have the grit to withstand a highly inefficient, abusive process? The book calls this the critical method, and it breaks it down into 6 steps to show just how broken the mechanics of it actually are.
Let's dissect those steps, because I think this is the exact loop most organizations are currently trapped in.
Let's do it.
Okay, step 1, get an assignment. Step 2, do the best you can. Step 3, have one or several people read your copy and provide criticism, both specific and general.
And this is where the friction starts, because general criticism is the enemy of progress.
Oh, it really is.
When someone says, it just doesn't pop, or I'm not feeling the energy, what is a writer actually supposed to do with that?
They usually just guess. They just throw things at the wall. Which leads directly to step 4. And this might be the most insidious part of the whole system. Step 4. Revise the copy while weighing the usefulness of the criticism against the power of the person who provided it.
Man, we have to unpack the gravity of step 4, weighing the usefulness against the power.
It's so real, though.
It is. This is the exact moment the creative process is contaminated by office politics.
Because think about it. If the intern says a line is confusing, you might just brush it off. But if the CEO says the exact same line is confusing, you rewrite the entire page.
Precisely. The writer is no longer trying to craft a message that resonates with the end consumer. The writer is playing political chess.
Wow. Yeah.
The primary objective completely shifts from will this sell to will this appease the highest paid person in the room. You're optimizing for internal egos, not external market response.
That makes total sense. You're just trying to survive the meeting.
Exactly.
So then we hit step 5. Get critiqued again by the same or different people. And step 6, repeat until someone in authority yells, stop! Just like Humongous getting too tired to swing the club.
It's an endless loop of pain.
It really is. But here's my question. We all went through the education system, right? This 6-step loop where you write, get critiqued by a superior, fix the flaws, and repeat. That is exactly how we learned to write essays in high school and college.
Right.
So are the authors saying the entire foundation of our education system is wrong?
Well, they refer to this as our academic hangover.
Academic hangover. I like that.
Yeah, it's a great phrase. It's not that the academic method is inherently evil,
No.
right? It's that it's misapplied in the business world. Because in academia, the goal is often to prove intellectual rigor.
Okay.
You want to demonstrate that you can find logical flaws in an argument, or you are trying to adhere to strict, subjective stylistic guidelines dictated by one specific professor. Your audience is an academic critic.
But in business, it's totally different.
Completely.
Yeah.
In direct response business, the ecosystem is entirely different. The only metric that actually matters is, does the customer respond? Do they open their wallet?
Right.
The critical method doesn't measure that at all. It just measures how well you can please an internal critic.
And it costs an absolute fortune. The text points out how expensive this is in terms of both time and money. I mean, sometimes the copy improves, sure, but often it gets revised right back to the original draft.
Ah, the fastidious and humongous loop.
Yes. Or it gets completely discarded because too many competing opinions just turned it into Frankenstein's monster.
It's like 5 people trying to paint on the exact same canvas at the same time.
Yeah.
You don't get a masterpiece, you just get brown mud.
Brown mud, that's a perfect analogy. So if you are listening to this right now and evaluating your own team's workflow, this is a crucial audit moment for you. Are you making revisions because they demonstrably improve the product for the end user? Or are you just slapping paint on the canvas to pacify the ego of a senior manager?
That is the question.
Because if it's the latter, the authors argue you are just bleeding resources.
Which brings us to the breaking point. Masterson and his colleagues at Agora Inc. and American Writers and Artists Inc., they realized they had a massive problem on their hands.
Yeah, right, because they were growing.
Exactly. They were trying to scale their businesses, which meant they needed to train novices to write breakthrough copy. Using that old critical method we just talked about, how long do you think it took to train someone?
The book says 2 to 4 years.
2 to 4 years of constant clubbing.
That's insane.
It is. The attrition rate was staggering. The process involved, and they say this in their own words, a lot of hurt feelings. People would just burn out and quit before they ever got good.
So they basically realized their entire operating system for evaluating ideas was corrupted by opinion,
Yes.
and they needed a totally new OS. So they trashed the critical method, and they invented what they call copy logic.
The game changer.
It really is. And the foundational rule of this new science is going to sound completely counterintuitive to anyone who has spent, a decade in corporate America.
The absolute non-negotiable rule is no critical remarks allowed.
None. Zero. You are literally not allowed to criticize the work.
I know it sounds crazy. It sounds like a recipe for mediocrity.
Mm-hmm.
The immediate fear everyone has is that we are lowering our standards and just coddling the writers.
That is exactly what I'm thinking. I mean, if a piece of work is objectively terrible, and I'm not allowed to say, hey, this is terrible, how on earth does it ever get better?
Right.
Don't we just end up publishing garbage because everyone is too afraid to hurt someone's feelings?
It's a completely valid fear, but it misunderstands the actual mechanism of the rule.
Mm-hmm.
Banning criticism isn't about protecting feelings at all. It's about shifting the metric.
Okay, shifting the metric. How?
Well, the old system measures quality, right? And quality is subjective. One manager's terrible is another manager's edgy.
So true.
Criticism stops creative momentum dead in its tracks.
Mm.
The writer becomes defensive. And the room just devolves into this useless debate about aesthetic theory.
Yeah, like, oh, I don't like this font, or I think this tone is too aggressive.
Exactly. Opinions. Pure opinions. So if you ban criticism, what replaces it? Because you have to replace it with something.
Right.
The new rule demands that you offer positive, specific copy suggestions instead. You cannot tear down the existing structure unless you are handing the writer a fully formed alternative brick to put in its place.
You have to bring a brick.
You have to bring a brick.
Yeah.
If you look at a headline and think, wow, this is weak, you are not allowed to say this headline is weak.
Yeah.
You have to sit there and stay silent until you can say, hey, what if we change the headline to 3 ways to double your income?
I see. Oh, that's brilliant. So you aren't ignoring bad work. You are just legally barring people from complaining about it unless they have actively done the mental labor of formulating a solution.
Yes. Think about how much time and energy that saves. The writer isn't wasting mental energy nursing a bruised ego, right? And they aren't trying to decipher vague complaints.
They don't have to guess what make it pot means.
Exactly. They're simply presented with a menu of concrete, alternative options. They can look at the new headline and say, yes, that is objectively stronger than what I had. Let's use it.
This is such a highly actionable takeaway for you listening right now. Tomorrow morning, practice eliminating the phrase, I don't like, or I feel like, from your feedback vocabulary.
It's harder than it sounds, but it's so powerful.
It is. If you can't articulate a specific alternative fix, you just haven't earned the right to speak in that meeting.
It completely neutralizes the ego in the room.
Yeah.
The critics are forced to become creators.
Okay, so that's the underlying philosophy. Let's get into the actual mechanics of it. How does a team actually do this on a Tuesday afternoon? The authors break copy logic down into 3 distinct pillars, and I want us to really visualize how these work in practice.
Okay.
The first pillar is the peer review.
Right. The peer review is a highly structured beta test, specifically designed for the headline and the lead of a sales letter.
And the lead is, what, the first few paragraphs?
Yeah, usually the first 200 to 400 words. And crucially, this relies on a small group of peers rather than a single expert handing down a verdict from on high.
Okay, got it. Then the second pillar is the CUB critique. That's C-U-B. This is the system designed for the second half of the letter, the main sales argument.
And then the third pillar is the four-legged stool test, which is a technique the copywriter actually uses on their own to ensure the overall promotion is structurally sound.
Before we break down how to actually execute a CUB critique, because I want to do a role play on that, I have to ask about this compartmentalization.
Sure.
Why do this in 3 separate stages? Why not just get the team in a conference room and review the entire 20-page document from top to bottom, which is the way literally every company currently operates?
It all comes down to cognitive load. I mean, think about it. Have you ever sat in a meeting to review a massive 20-page document?
Oh, yeah. And honestly, by page 4, I'm usually just thinking about what I'm going to have for lunch.
Exactly. Human attention degrades rapidly. If you try to review a 20-page letter in one sitting, by the time you reach the core argument on page 5 or 6, the reviewers are completely fatigued.
Yeah, your brain is fried.
They've forgotten the initial hook entirely. And the feedback devolves from, strategic structural insights into petty grammatical nitpicking.
You're just correcting commas because your brain doesn't have the bandwidth to evaluate the actual persuasion strategy anymore.
That's exactly what happens. The authors understand that different parts of a sales letter do completely different jobs. The headline and the lead are the most critical. Because if the prospect doesn't get hooked in those first 400 words, the remaining 19 pages literally do not exist.
Right, they've already closed the tab.
Exactly. Therefore, you isolate the lead. The peer review for a lead takes 30 minutes. It is intense, it's highly focused, and it's incredibly fast.
It's like tuning an engine then. You don't take a sledgehammer to the whole car, you use a highly specific wrench on the carburetor, and then you move to the transmission with a completely different tool.
That's a fantastic way to visualize it. So once the lead is locked in and humming, you move to the body copy using the CUB critique.
Okay, let's actually role play this, because I really want the listener to understand exactly how a CUB critique functions.
I love this idea.
So CUB stands for identifying what is confusing, unbelievable, or boring. Let's imagine I'm the writer and you're the peer reviewer. We're looking at the body of a sales letter for, let's say, a new tech product.
Perfect.
I'll read a sentence and you do the CUB critique on me.
Let's do it. Hit me.
Okay, here's my copy. Our proprietary synergistic blockchain paradigm will seamlessly integrate with your legacy systems, instantly boosting your total revenue by 500% in a matter of hours, which means you'll have more time to spend with your family.
Okay, stop right there. Now, if I'm doing a CUB critique, I am not going to tell you your writing is bad. I am just going to act as a diagnostic tool. So I would point to the phrase, proprietary synergistic blockchain paradigm. And I would simply say, confusing.
Okay, it's a bunch of jargon, I get that.
Exactly. Then I would point to boosting your total revenue by 500% in a matter of hours. And I would say, unbelievable.
Because it sounds like a scam. It's too big of a promise.
Right. It triggers the skepticism alarm. And finally, the pivot at the end to, which means you'll have more time to spend with your family. I might flag that as boring or cliche, because every single marketing pitch uses that exact same emotional appeal.
It's played out, but notice what didn't happen there.
What's that?
You didn't say you're a terrible writer. Why did you use so much jargon?
Yeah.
You didn't attack my intelligence. You just held up a mirror to the text.
Yes. It goes back to an analogy you could use. It's like an X-ray. When a doctor looks at a broken arm on an X-ray, they don't scream at the bone for being jagged.
Bad bone.
Exactly. You just observe the break. In the old critical method, we treat a marketing campaign like a math equation that is either objectively right or wrong. But a sales letter is a living, breathing, emotional organism.
I love that.
The diagnostic landscape is really murky. You can't just point a red pen at it and expect it to heal. The CUB critique is an X-ray that highlights the fractures, the confusing, unbelievable, or boring parts, and it does it completely without judgment.
That makes total sense. And it leaves the writer feeling empowered. Like, I know exactly what needs fixing now, and my ego isn't bruised at all.
And once that's done, the writer uses the third pillar solo, the four-legged stool.
Right, the solo check.
While the book dives a lot deeper into the specific legs later on, structurally, we know what this means in direct response. A stool falls over if it's missing a leg. Right.
Obviously.
Well, a sales letter fails if it's missing a core element of persuasion. So the writer does a final solo audit to ensure the big idea, the promise, the proof, and the call to action are all perfectly balanced.
So you beta test the hook in a group, you X-ray the body for friction using CUB, and then you solo check the structure. It's an incredibly efficient assembly line.
It's a machine.
It is. And to really drive this home, the authors present what they call the showdown. It's an 8-point comparison between the old school method and the new school copy logic.
Let's weave through these points, because hearing them contrasted side by side really exposes the cracks in the traditional corporate foundation.
Go for it.
The first point is the core philosophy. The old school depends on opinion, while the new school depends on response.
Which we discussed, moving from I like it to does it actually work?
Exactly. The second point is about authority. The old school is guided by a single expert. The new school is directed by a group of peers.
Now, hold on a second. This is where a lot of executives listening are going to get nervous. Directed by a group of peers, doesn't that risk turning into design by committee?
Ah, the dreaded committee.
We've all seen what happens when 10 people try to write an ad together. It gets watered down, it's homogenized, and it turns into absolute vanilla mush because it's trying to please everyone in the room.
That is the most common and, honestly, the most justified fear. But the authors are very careful to clarify this nuance. Copy logic is not a committee writing the copy together.
So that they don't all have joint custody of the Google Doc.
Absolutely not. The copywriter still owns the document entirely. The group's job is not to reach a consensus on what the best copy is.
Okay.
Their job is simply to record their visceral, emotional response to what is currently on the page and offer a menu of alternatives. The writer takes that data and makes the final call. They are not voting on the final product. They are acting as a focus group.
Ah, okay, so they are beta testing it, which actually ties into another massive difference on their list. The old school is intellectually biased, while the new school records emotional response.
Yes.
Let's dig into that phrase, intellectually biased. What does that actually mean in the boardroom?
Well, think about what happens when you ask a manager or a senior editor to critique a piece of work.
They put on their critic hat.
Exactly. They feel the need to justify their salary and their title. They want to sound smart in front of everyone.
Of course.
So they look for grammatical nuances, they debate abstract theories of persuasion, they try to find tiny flaws just to prove they are paying attention. That is intellectual bias. They're acting like a professor grading a thesis paper.
But the actual consumer, the person reading the ad at home, they aren't wearing a critic hat. They are just sorting their mail over the trash can.
Spot on. The new school, specifically through the peer review, forces the group to abandon their critic hats completely. You don't ask them, is this good? You ask them, would you keep reading? Are you bored? Are you confused?
Right.
That pure gut-level emotional reaction is a far more accurate predictor of how the real market will behave than any intellectual theorizing in a boardroom.
So you are basically shifting your team's entire identity. You're telling them, I don't want you to be critics who look for flaws. I want you to be test subjects who honestly report your emotional reactions.
Yes.
That changes the entire energy of the room.
It does, which leads perfectly into the remaining points of the showdown. Because you've neutralized the ego, the old school method of criticism is replaced by creativity.
Makes sense.
The old school negative approach is replaced by a positive one, and the destructive nature becomes constructive.
And most importantly for the bottom line, the old school requirement of multiple drafts, those endless revision loops, is replaced by one draft.
Just one.
You do the peer review, you do the CUB critique, and you are done. The old school takes weeks or months, like poor Rex the caveman, and the new school takes hours or days.
Let's talk about what that compression of time actually means for a business, because the end of the chapter outlines the cascading benefits of adopting this criticism-free workflow, and it goes far beyond just hitting deadlines faster.
The emotional relief alone seems worth it. I mean, the book says that copywriters no longer have to endure clueless critics dissecting their work for endless hours. Defensiveness completely disappears.
That elimination of defensiveness is massive.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the brain chemistry. When a creator feels attacked, their brain literally goes into fight or flight mode.
Oh, definitely.
They cannot be creative in that state. When you remove the attack, their creative energy is suddenly freed up and channeled entirely into solving the problem on the page.
The book actually says you will leave the peer review motivated and eager to write. Eager. Imagine leaving a review meeting eager to get back to your desk rather than needing to go hide in the break room for an hour to calm down.
It's a totally different culture.
Yeah.
And this psychological safety creates an incredible secondary benefit, which is organic mentorship.
Tell me more about that.
Under the new school system, junior staff and senior staff are in the exact same room, participating in the same peer review. The juniors hear the same positive, specific suggestions as the veterans.
Ah, I see.
They learn how the veterans think. The knowledge transfer happens in real time on actual live projects without anyone having to deliver a formal, boring lecture.
That is huge. Because the old way, the way Masterson was trained by RJ, that took years. Think about the business owner listening to this. Under the critical method, you spend 4 years paying someone, training them, putting them through the emotional ringer.
Yep.
By the time they actually get good enough to generate serious revenue for you, they are likely so burned out and resentful that they quit, and they take all that expensive training straight to your competitor.
It's an incredible waste of human capital. But with CopyLogic, the writers learn what they need to know in a matter of months, not years. Because they aren't being beaten down, they are happier, they are producing much faster, and they are way more loyal to the company.
The ROI is just undeniable.
It is. When you combine higher retention, accelerated training, and a highly collaborative environment, the entire company scales at a completely different velocity.
So the absence of criticism isn't just some HR initiative to make people feel warm and fuzzy.
Not at all. It's not about being nice.
It is a highly calculated, optimized strategy for maximizing human creative output. It's literally about corporate profit.
Exactly. Banning criticism is actually the most ruthlessly efficient thing a company can do.
For any business leader listening right now, this might be the most valuable takeaway of the year for you. The cheapest and most effective way to retain talent and boost productivity isn't buying a new project management software. It isn't restructuring your bonus plan.
Yep.
It's implementing strict, non-negotiable rules around how feedback is delivered in your conference rooms.
It changes the physics of the creative process. If we synthesize everything we've covered today, the core insight really is this. True, breakthrough improvement in any creative or business endeavor does not come from breaking the creator down with criticism.
Right.
We have to completely abandon that prehistoric assumption that suffering yields quality. Real improvement comes from objectively measuring the audience's emotional response and then building the work up with positive, specific solutions.
Building it up instead of tearing it down. You have to bring a brick.
You have to bring a brick. And that leaves us with a very provocative thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
If the club of traditional criticism is as destructive as this chapter suggests, I want you to consider your own workplace tomorrow. Consider how much raw talent, how many brilliant outside-the-box ideas, and how much potential revenue is currently trapped inside your organization simply because your people are too afraid of the club to share their most innovative thoughts.
Wow. How many million-dollar ideas have died a quiet death in a track changes document just because someone didn't want to get yelled at?
Probably more than we want to admit.
It's sobering. But there is a very clear way out. We've talked about the philosophy today, the why behind the shift from opinion to response. But how exactly do you manage that room?
That's the tricky part.
Right. How do you get a group of highly opinionated, stubborn experts to evaluate a piece of work without a single word of criticism slipping out? That is the magic of the peer review process. And that is exactly what we will uncover in our next deep dive. Keep your clubs in the cave, everyone. So what if I told you that the absolute fastest way to turn a B-level idea into an A-level idea is to just completely ban anyone on your team from saying anything nice about it?
Wow. Okay, that sounds pretty harsh right out of the gate.
Right, it does. But well, wait, while you're at it, you also have to ban them from saying anything mean about it too, like total radio silence on all opinions.
Oh, so just no feedback at all.
None. I mean, I don't know about you, but a room where no one is allowed to critique or praise an idea, that doesn't really sound like a recipe for a creative breakthrough to me.
No, not at all.
It sounds like, the most awkward, tense staff meeting imaginable. Just people staring at each other.
Yeah, it sounds incredibly uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And mostly because it goes against, well, basically every single instinct we have about collaboration.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we are conditioned from kindergarten onward to believe that feedback is this sacred pillar of teamwork.
Yeah.
You share a concept, someone points out a flaw, someone else highlights a strength.
Right. The whole pros and cons list thing.
Exactly. And through that friction, the idea supposedly gets polished into a diamond. But the framework we are dissecting in today's deep dive essentially argues that this traditional friction is just a massive waste of time.
Oh, I am definitely going to need some serious convincing on this because stripping away all feedback just feels like flying blind.
I get that. It's a huge paradigm shift.
It is. So for everyone listening, we are looking at the core methodology from Chapter 2 of Michael Masterson and Mike Palmer's book, Copy Logic.
Specifically, this concept they call moving from criticism to creativity.
Yeah. And the central premise here is that our standard feedback loops, both the bruising, negative critiques, and the ego-stroking positive praises, that they are the single biggest bottleneck to actual innovation.
And, they don't just make this claim theoretically. They back it up with a rather startling metric.
Oh,
Honestly.
yeah, the 20-minute thing.
Right. So Katie Yeakel, who runs American Writers and Artists, Inc., she utilizes this exact system. And she states that by using this method, they can turn B-level copy into A-level copy in just 20 minutes.
20 minutes? I mean, come on. That is a really bold claim for any creative endeavor.
It is incredibly fast.
Usually getting a committee to agree on a single sentence takes, 3 business days and 5 separate email threads?
At least. But that speed, that is the core promise of this framework.
Okay, so who is this actually for?
Well, whether you are an entrepreneur trying to write a high-converting sales page or a manager trying to fix a disjointed slide deck, or really just anyone trying to collaborate without the usual ego clashes, this method bypasses all those philosophical debates entirely.
It just cuts the fluff.
Exactly. It changes the fundamental rules of engagement for evaluating ideas.
Okay, let's test that, because I really want to see how this actually plays out in a real room with real egos.
It gets messy before it gets better.
I bet. So the authors trace this back to a specific origin story. It's a moment they refer to as the chalkboard epiphany.
Ah, yes. Classic story in this methodology.
So we have this marketing director named Tom Hickling. He's standing by a large chalkboard, leading a brainstorm session for a group of copywriters. And he basically opens the floor with one uncompromising rule: no critical remarks allowed, period.
Which is a terrifying instruction for a room full of professional writers.
I can imagine the panic.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Think about the neurology and the conditioning of anyone who works with words, or really anyone who has been through the modern education system.
Right.
We are deeply, deeply trained in what the authors call the critical method. Like in university, you don't get an A for just reading a book.
You get an A for tearing it apart.
Exactly. You get an A for deconstructing it, finding its flaws, pointing out its structural weaknesses. The critical method is basically how we prove our intelligence to each other.
That is so true. We find the error, we point it out, and then we feel smart.
We feel very smart. So Tom strips them of their primary tool for sounding smart. He says, no critical remarks.
And the immediate result isn't some burst of creativity, it's just paralysis. Like the room goes entirely dead.
Nobody knows how to speak without criticizing?
Right, because they've literally never been asked to just build. They're sitting there waiting for something to tear down.
It's muscle memory. You can't just turn it off.
So Tom is standing there in the silence, and he has to practically beg them. He says, look, come on, give me a suggestion. And finally, someone breaks.
The brave soul in the back.
Yeah. A newly hired marketing assistant sitting in the back of the room raises a hand and offers a headline for a financial product. The headline is, How to Cash In on the Technology Boom.
Okay, not bad.
Tom writes it on the chalkboard. Now, looking at that objectively, it's a B-level idea. It's functional, sure, but it's not going to stop anyone scrolling on their phone.
Now it's pretty generic.
So Tom asks the room for another suggestion to improve it. And a senior copywriter raises his hand and says, I think it would be better if that headline were more specific.
And right there, we see the trap spring.
Yep.
That is the critical method manifesting perfectly.
But wait, let me actually challenge you on that for a second, because make it more specific. That sounds like a perfectly valid note, doesn't it?
It does sound helpful.
Right. If I am managing a team and the copy is just too vague, telling them to dial in the specificity is just good direction. I mean, why is that a trap?
It feels like good direction, yeah. But let's look at what is actually happening in the brain of the person giving that note versus the brain of the person receiving it.
Okay.
When that senior writer says, make it more specific, he is operating purely as a diagnostician. He is standing totally outside the creative arena, pointing a finger at a flaw.
He's playing it safe.
Exactly. He has identified a gap between where the copy is and where it needs to be. But he's completely offloading the actual labor of bridging that gap onto someone else.
Oh, I see. He's basically saying, well, I found the problem. Now you go do the hard work of actually solving it.
Precisely. And Tom Hickling recognizes this instantly. He shuts the senior writer down on the spot. He literally says, that's a criticism. I need a suggestion.
The dynamic of that moment is wild to me because you have this senior copywriter who is, undoubtedly used to having his opinions treated as gospel, suddenly getting reprimanded in front of the junior staff.
Yeah, you can imagine the ego hit there.
His face probably flushes. He gets defensive. In the book, he argues back, right? He says, it is a suggestion. I'm suggesting we take that headline and make it more specific.
Typical defense mechanism.
But Tom doesn't budge. He just says, okay, give me an example of what you mean.
And that demand, give me an example, that is the fulcrum of this entire methodology.
It completely flips the script.
It really does. By rejecting the abstract critique and demanding concrete copy, Tom is forcing that senior writer out of the comfortable, protected role of the critic.
And dragging him back into the trenches.
Yes. Back into the highly vulnerable role of the creator.
He's forcing him to put his money where his mouth is, basically.
Exactly. Think about the cognitive load involved here. When you give someone a note, like make it more specific, you are creating a massive amount of mental friction for the person receiving it.
Because they don't know what you mean.
Right. The original writer now has to interpret what your definition of specific is. Do you want a specific dollar amount? Do you want a specific time frame? A specific technology sector?
It's like a guessing game.
They have to guess what is in your head, and then they have to generate the creative solution from scratch, just hoping it aligns with your vague critique. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And it's deeply inefficient.
I totally see what you mean. It's like, it's like being the passenger in a car.
Okay, I like this.
The driver makes the wrong turn, and the traditional critical method is basically sitting in the passenger seat and saying, hey, your spatial awareness is terrible, you're driving the wrong way, we need a better route.
Which is incredibly annoying to hear when you're driving.
Extremely.
Yeah.
You've identified a very real problem, sure, but you haven't helped at all. A suggestion, a true actionable suggestion, is looking at the map and saying, take the next left onto Main Street.
That is a brilliant way to frame it.
One of those interactions is going to cause a fight and spike my cortisol levels. The other one actually gets the car to the destination.
The take a left on Main Street approach forces the passenger to actually read the map. And that is exactly what happens in the boardroom with Tom.
The senior writer has to read the map.
He has to take a beat. He actually has to think about the problem he just diagnosed. He processes the vague concept of the technology boom, and he comes back with actual tangible copy.
Right.
He says, how about how to make 450% on the coming boom in cyber technology?
Wow.
And Tom says, no, that's a suggestion, and he writes it on the board.
The difference in quality there is undeniable. Like how to cash in on the technology boom is entirely forgettable.
It's noise.
But how to make 450% on the coming boom in cyber technology, that actually stops you in your tracks.
It has teeth.
It does. It has a hard number. It has a specific sector. It creates urgency. And they got there not by, debating the philosophy of specificity, but by forcing the critic to become a contributor.
If you zoom out and apply this to standard corporate communication, the implications are staggering.
Oh, man.
Think about how many hours of our lives are wasted in meetings where people just give notes.
Oh, many hours.
A manager reviews a pitch deck and says, well, it needs more pop. Or it feels a bit dry.
Yeah.
Or can we make it more dynamic?
Oh, make it pop. That is the absolute bane of every graphic designer's existence, I swear.
Because it is an utterly useless string of words. It is a philosophical critique masquerading as help.
Totally.
The takeaway here for anyone listening is to fundamentally audit how you interact with your colleagues' work. You have to ban yourself from giving notes.
Just stop doing it.
Period. If you see a flaw in a sentence, do not point it out. Rewrite the sentence yourself.
Give them the Main Street directions.
Yes. If you think a slide in a presentation is confusing, Do not tell the designer it's confusing. Sketch out a new wireframe for the slide. If you don't like a strategic approach, offer the exact, actionable alternative.
Okay, I am entirely sold on the ban against negative criticism. The logic holds up perfectly. If you want a better product, demand solutions, not complaints.
Simple enough.
But there is a big but here. The story at the chalkboard doesn't end there, and this next part is where I really struggle with this framework.
You're talking about the young copywriter.
Yes. So they have this great new headline on the board, the one about making 450% on cyber technology. And a different, younger copywriter in the room timidly raises his hand and says, I really like that new headline.
He was just trying to be nice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Tom Hickling, who is apparently running this meeting like a drill sergeant, instantly yells, "Stop!" He points at the young man and says, "You are making a criticism."
And you can just imagine the sheer confusion on that young man's face.
He literally pleads with Tom. He says, "No, I'm not. I'm saying I like it. It's a compliment."
But Tom doesn't care.
He's absolutely ruthless. He says positive comments or criticisms, too. I'm looking for copy suggestions, just copy.
It is a really radical stance to take in a workplace.
It's beyond radical, honestly. It feels completely counterproductive. Like, I need you to explain the underlying logic here.
Let's unpack it.
Because if I am running a team and I ban my staff from praising each other, I'm going to be left with a sterile, joyless work environment.
That's the fear, right?
Yeah. If I can't tell my junior writer she did a phenomenal job on a difficult draft, morale is going to completely plummet. Why in the world would you ban someone from saying good job during a brainstorm?
It's a very natural pushback, but it requires us to understand the underlying neurology of collaboration and the two distinct modes our brains operate in.
Okay, what are the modes?
So why ban praise? Because any comment, even a well-intentioned compliment, immediately shifts the collective brain of the group from creative mode into evaluative mode.
Okay, what is the difference between those two modes in practice? Like, how does that actually look?
When you are in creative mode or generative mode, your brain is looking forward. It is looking at what exists and asking, what can I add to this? What is the next logical step?
So it's about momentum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is a state of flow. Evaluative mode, on the other hand, looks backward. It looks at what was just created and asks, is this good or bad? Does this meet my standards?
Oh, I see.
When that young copywriter says, I really like that headline, he thinks he is being supportive. But subliminally, he is placing a value judgment on the work.
He's making himself a critic.
Yes. He is declaring himself a judge of quality. He is saying this headline has passed my personal test for what is good.
And while that feels validating for the person who wrote the headline, you're saying it changes the entire atmosphere of the room.
Entirely. Because if the floor is suddenly open for someone to say, I liked it because of reason X.
Then the floor is also implicitly open for someone else to say, well, I didn't like it because of reason Y.
Bingo. You have instantly invited the chaos, the debate, and the ego-driven arguments of the traditional critical method right back into the room.
Wow. You've legitimized opinions again.
Yes. The moment praise is allowed, people stop thinking about how to build on the idea, and they start thinking about how to defend their own aesthetic preferences.
That makes so much sense when you put it like that.
And Masterson actually points this out beautifully in the text. He notes that at the very end of this chalkboard session, after they had generated all this incredible material, Tom finally relaxed the rules.
Oh, boy.
He opened the floor to general discussion and allowed people to say whatever they wanted about the process.
Let me guess. Absolute chaos.
A lively melee broke out almost instantly. People immediately started throwing around abstract theories about which headlines were best and why.
Back to the debate club.
Exactly. It was spirited, sure, but it was chaotic. Nothing useful, no new copy came out of that arguing. The actual breakthrough creativity only happened when that strict no criticism, no comment rule was enforced.
You know what that makes me think of? It makes me think of the fundamental rules of improv comedy.
Oh, interesting. How so?
If you are on stage doing an improv scene and your partner says something absolutely brilliant and hilarious, you cannot break character, stop the scene and say, wow, great joke, man. I really love the phrasing on that.
Right, that'd be terrible.
If you do that, the scene dies on the spot. The reality of the scene is totally shattered. You just have to accept the reality they built and add your piece to it. The entire philosophy is yes and.
Yes and. Exactly.
Building on the idea is the only way forward. Praise, weirdly enough, acts as a massive speed bump.
That is a perfect analogy because praise stops momentum. Praise strokes the ego. And in a generative setting, Stroking the ego is just as distracting as bruising it.
It takes the focus off the work.
It does. And think about the pressure. If I praise you, you feel good, but you also might feel pressure to recreate that success. You might become protective of the idea I just praised, resisting further changes to it.
Well, that's dangerous. You fall in love with your own work because it got validated.
Exactly. You get defensive if someone tries to tweak it. The practical takeaway for the listener here is that when you are in a generative state, when the goal is pure output and brainstorming, you must ban all meta commentary.
Just keep your thoughts to yourself and keep building.
Keep the focus entirely on generating the next iteration. Keep the ego completely out of the room. You are not there to validate each other's feelings. You are there to build the strongest possible asset.
So where does the praise go?
Save the praise for the one-on-one performance review or, for drinks after the project is done. In the room, the work is the only thing that matters.
Okay, I am tracking with you now. The logic is ironclad. We ban mean comments to avoid offloading the cognitive work of finding solutions.
Right.
We ban nice comments to prevent the room from shifting into evaluative debate mode.
Yes.
We are only allowed to offer concrete, specific alternative solutions, but, that presents a massive logistical problem.
You're talking about the evaluation vacuum.
Exactly. If I ban all critical language and I ban all praise, how on earth do we decide which of these new suggestions actually goes to print?
It's the natural next hurdle.
Right. If 20 different headlines are generated, how do I communicate that 19 of them are absolute garbage without breaking the rules of the room? You've essentially created a vacuum of judgment. How do we filter the good from the bad?
It's a huge problem. And it's something the authors had to solve very quickly. Because they realized that while banning commentary generated dozens of great ideas, they still needed a filtering mechanism.
They needed a way to pick a winner.
They needed a way to ruthlessly evaluate the copy without getting bogged down in those intellectual, ego-driven debates we just talked about. And the solution they found is deeply rooted in the psychology of direct marketing, specifically in a component they call the lead.
Okay, let's define lead for a second so we're all on the same page.
Sure.
In the context of this framework, they define the lead as the first 200 to 400 words of a promotion. So if it's a physical letter, it includes the envelope teaser, the main headline, and those crucial opening paragraphs.
And for modern applications, if it's a digital product, it's the subject line and the top fold of the landing page.
Right. And the underlying truth of a lead, which applies to a sales letter, a YouTube video intro, or an investor pitch, is that it really only has two jobs. It must stimulate emotional prejudices, and it must provoke unconscious feelings.
Meaning it bypasses logic entirely in those first few seconds.
Completely. And this aligns perfectly with what we know about the neuroscience of decision-making.
We decide with our hearts, not our heads.
Exactly. We make decisions emotionally first, and we justify them logically second. If a lead doesn't hook the reader on a visceral, emotional level immediately, the rest of the logical sales argument doesn't even matter.
They're already gone.
Right. You could have the most mathematically sound product in the world, but if the lead is boring, the person has already thrown the letter in the trash or clicked away to another tab.
So true.
Therefore, the effectiveness of a lead isn't about its grammar. It isn't about its cleverness or its adherence to brand guidelines. It is entirely about its raw emotional power.
So the problem they had to solve was, how do you measure raw emotional power without using words like cliché or boring or brilliant?
Because the second you use those words, you're back in the debate club.
Exactly. The solution is elegantly simple, honestly. You quantify it. You use a number.
Oh, the rating system.
Yes. The team developed a highly specific numerical rating scale from 1.0 to 4.0. Instead of debating the theoretical merits of a headline, participants simply assign a number based on their raw gut reaction to the copy.
A 1 to 4 scale. Let's break down exactly what these numbers mean, because they aren't arbitrary. The definitions are vital to making this work.
Go for it.
According to the method, a 1.0 means you would definitely not read any further. It's an instant rejection.
Dead on arrival.
A 2.0 means you probably would not read any further. A 3.0 means you would probably read further, but with some skepticism or hesitation. And a 4.0 means you would read further with a high level of interest and genuine enthusiasm.
The brilliance of this specific constraint is what it forces the evaluator to filter out.
What do you mean?
Because you are only allowed to give a number, You don't have to think about what good copy is supposed to look like, according to industry standards.
You don't have to over-intellectualize it.
Right. You don't have to worry about placating the feelings of the copywriter sitting across from you. You don't have to construct a logical argument for why you feel the way you do. You just have to ask yourself one visceral question. Does this move me? Do I want to keep reading?
I want to emphasize how smart it is that they chose an even-numbered scale. They didn't use a 1 to 5 scale or a 1 to 10 scale.
The neutral middle is a killer.
It really is. If you use a 1 to 5 scale, human nature dictates that everyone will just give a safe, neutral 3 when they don't want to hurt someone's feelings but don't actually love the idea.
Exactly. A 1 to 5 scale allows for cowardice. A 1 to 4 scale forces a stance.
You have to pick a side.
You have to decide if it falls on the negative side, a 1 or 2, meaning you stop reading, or the positive side, a 3 or 4, meaning you keep reading. It forces the evaluator into a binary choice about engagement and then measures the intensity of that choice.
It's like looking at a thermometer instead of having a weather debate.
Oh, I like that.
Traditional feedback is standing outside and arguing with your team about whether it feels chilly or brisk or unseasonably cool. You can argue about that for an hour and never reach a consensus because it's completely subjective.
Everyone feels the cold differently.
Right. The 1 to 4 scale is just looking at the thermometer. It's 40 degrees, end of debate. Let's actually role play this so the listener can hear how clinical and efficient it is. Let's say I pitch a headline to you.
Okay, let's do it.
So I say, new software organizes your inbox.
1.5.
Ouch. Okay, no debate, no explanation. I just take the 1.5. Now I have to generate a solution. How about the AI inbox assistant that saves you 10 hours a week? Better. I'm on the positive side now. Let's push it further. Let's see. How to hit inbox 0 every day without reading a single email.
3.8.
Boom! In 15 seconds, we escalated the concept purely based on your numerical emotional reaction. I didn't get defensive because you don't call my first idea boring.
I didn't say a word.
You just gave me a data point.
By assigning numbers, the team completely bypassed the intellectual, philosophical debates about why a headline worked. They bypassed the ego. They got straight to the empirical truth of whether it works.
It's so fast.
And the rule is ruthless. If a piece of copy averages below a certain threshold, say a 2.8 or a 3.0, the leader of the session just aborts it.
They don't try to salvage it?
No, they don't try to fix it through discussion. They simply say, this didn't meet the minimum score, we aren't reviewing it today. They scrap it and move to the next item.
The efficiency of that is just mind-boggling. What used to take 30 minutes of painful subjective criticism and hurt feelings now takes 2 minutes of numerical voting.
It is incredibly liberating. The practical takeaway here for anyone listening is to implement this specific metric the next time you are evaluating anything subjective.
Anything at all.
A marketing pitch, an email campaign, a product design, even a thumbnail for a YouTube video. Don't ask your team, is this well written? Or is this a good design?
Because those questions invite the debate club.
Exactly. Ask them to rate it from 1 to 4 based on a specific behavioral outcome. Does this make you want to click buy? Or does this make you want to keep reading? Turn the subjective art into a measurable data point.
Which leads us to the final and perhaps most disruptive piece of this puzzle. If the entire evaluation process is based on judging raw, gut emotional reactions, it fundamentally changes who gets to have a seat at the table.
It democratizes the whole process.
Right, because if I'm running a highly technical direct response marketing agency, my instinct is that I only want the smartest, most experienced copywriters in the room evaluating the work.
Of course. That's how corporate structures work.
And the authors note that initially, they operated on this exact assumption. They thought this process required the writer and maybe 2 highly experienced copy masters to give the numeric ratings.
It's the standard corporate hierarchy. Expertise dictates authority. But as they began to experiment and expand the group, they discovered a phenomenon that completely shattered that hierarchy.
Okay, what did they find?
They discovered that neophytes, absolute beginners, 22-year-old marketing assistants, customer service representatives who had literally never written a line of copy in their lives were capable of rating the material on this 1 to 4 numeric scale just as accurately as 20-year industry veterans.
That is just wild to me.
When they tallied the scores, the neophytes' ratings were remarkably consistent with the experts' ratings.
I have to admit, that really challenges my assumptions. You would logically assume that a person with 2 decades of experience writing multi-million-dollar sales letters would have a vastly more refined palette for what makes a good hook.
You would think so, yes.
Yeah.
You'd think their 1 to 4 rating would be significantly more calibrated than the receptionists.
And that assumption is exactly where we get tripped up. The veteran certainly has a more refined understanding of the mechanics of copywriting. But remember what we are testing here.
We're testing the emotional reaction?
Yes, we are not testing the mechanics. We are testing the raw emotional resonance of a lead. We are testing whether a typical, easily distracted consumer will want to keep reading.
And everyone knows how to be a consumer.
Exactly. A 22-year-old assistant who has been shopping, scrolling, and consuming media their entire life has just as much experience having a gut reaction to an ad as the CEO does. We are all world-class experts at knowing when we are bored.
We are all world-class experts at knowing when we are bored. That is a fantastic point. I love that.
Furthermore, the veteran copywriter might actually be at a severe disadvantage in this specific scenario because they are burdened by what psychologists call the curse of knowledge.
Okay, explain the curse of knowledge in this context.
The curse of knowledge is a cognitive bias that occurs when an individual, communicating with other individuals, unknowingly assumes that the others have the background to understand.
Right.
But in evaluation, it means the expert can no longer see the work through the eyes of a beginner. A 20-year veteran might read a headline, and their brain immediately goes analytical. They think, I see what they're doing here. They're using a classic nested loop technique.
Hold on, define a nested loop technique for me, because I don't want to fall victim to the curse of knowledge myself right now.
Sure. A nested loop is a copywriting and storytelling tactic where you open a story to grab attention, but before you resolve the tension of that story, you open a second story and then a third.
To keep them hooked.
Right. You nest them inside each other to keep the reader waiting for the payoffs.
Oh, like Christopher Nolan's Inception, but for marketing.
Exactly. So the veteran reads the copy, spots the nested loop, admires the structural technique, and gives it a 3.5.
Because they appreciate the craft.
But the beginner, the person from IT or customer service, reads the exact same copy, doesn't know what a nested loop is, gets confused by the multiple storylines, and thinks, I'm bored and confused. 1.5.
And the beginner's reaction is actually much closer to the reality of the target market.
It's the only reaction that matters.
The consumer buying the product doesn't care about nested loops. They don't know what that is. They just care if they are interested.
Precisely. The expert's deep knowledge actually blinds them to the visceral reality of the copy. This discovery radically democratized the entire process.
So they didn't need the gurus anymore.
No. Through extensive trial and error, the authors found that you don't need a room full of highly paid, pretentious experts to tell you if a marketing hook works. The customer isn't a copywriting expert, so your evaluators don't need to be either.
This shifts the power dynamic of a company in such a healthy way, honestly. You are no longer reliant on the guru at the top of the food chain to bless an idea.
It's a huge relief for leadership, too.
The authors found that the optimal dynamic for this process, which they officially christened the peer review, evolved into a sweet spot of 4 to 6 people.
The math behind that sweet spot is actually really important. Why 4 to 6?
Yeah, why not 20?
Well, if you only have 2 people, the sample size is too small. One bad mood can tank a great idea.
Someone had a bad morning coffee and the headline is dead.
Exactly.
Oh.
But if you have 10 people, the session bogs down, it takes too long to collect the scores, and you start risking groupthink or social loafing.
The loud voices take over.
Right. 4 to 6 people provides just enough mathematical diversity to get a solid, reliable average score, but keeps the group small enough to maintain rapid momentum.
And the practical takeaway here for the listener is to actively democratize your own feedback loops.
Stop asking the same people.
Yes, stop only asking your direct peers for feedback. Bring people in from outside your silo. If you are in the marketing department, bring in someone from accounting or IT or customer success to test the emotional resonance of your ideas.
Just grab whoever's in the hallway.
Hand them the 1 to 4 scale. Their unvarnished gut reaction is incredibly valid, highly lucrative data.
It's arguably the most valuable data you can get before going to market.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground here, basically dismantling everything we thought we knew about teamwork.
We really did.
Let's pull all of these threads together. We started with Tom Hickling at the chalkboard, banning the traditional critical method. We explored the neurological danger of positive praise and why it triggers evaluative debate.
The improv analogy.
Right. We broke down the 1.0 to 4.0 emotional rating thermometer, and we just discussed the democratized 4 to 6 person room that defies the curse of knowledge. how do we synthesize all of this into a single, cohesive paradigm?
If we distill this chapter down to its absolute soul, it is a devastating empirical critique of the way modern professionals communicate.
It really exposes us.
It does. The traditional critical method where we hunt for faults, debate philosophy, and offer vague notes is fundamentally an ego-driven destructive trap.
It's about looking smart, not being helpful.
Exactly. It wastes immense amounts of time, it ruins team morale, and, ironically, it almost always results in a watered-down, compromised final product that was designed by a committee.
And nobody wants that.
No. What the authors of CopyLogic have done is replace that archaic tradition with a true, verifiable science of breakthrough creativity.
And that science relies on a formula.
A very specific, uncompromising formula. 0 opinions, plus quantifiable emotional reactions, plus highly specific, actionable suggestions.
It takes all the messiness, the office politics, and the fragility of the human ego completely out of the equation.
It's purely objective.
When you use this method, you aren't defending your identity as a smart person. You are just looking at a raw number on a thermometer and then looking at alternative sentences to make the number go up.
That's exactly it. And while Masterson and Palmer call this copy logic, and they apply it very specifically to the lead of a direct response sales letter, this framework is so much bigger than just the copywriting niche.
It applies to everything.
It is a universal cheat code for human collaboration. Whether you are building software, designing architecture, or writing a screenplay, this method shifts a team's dynamic.
It changes how people relate to each other.
It stops them from tearing each other down with abstract notes and forces them to collaboratively build each other up with actual tangible solutions. It forces everyone in the room to be an active participant in the creation process, rather than a passive, comfortable judge.
It forces you to get in the car and read the map. It's just brilliant. So to you, the listener, next time you are asked for feedback, whether it's on a memo, a slide deck, a YouTube thumbnail, or a full-scale marketing campaign, I want to issue you a challenge.
This is a good one.
Try going an entire day without using the words I think, or I like, or I don't like. Strip those evaluative phrases from your vocabulary entirely.
Just see what happens.
See what happens when you're only allowed to offer exact word-for-word solutions and quantifiable ratings. You might just find your team moving faster and creating better work than you ever thought possible.
It will undoubtedly feel unnatural and uncomfortable at first because you are rewiring decades of habit. But the speed and the quality of the results will speak for themselves almost immediately.
Now, you understand the philosophy behind banning criticism. You understand the psychology of the chalkboard epiphany and the power of the 1 to 4 scale. But understanding the theory is one thing. Executing it in a room full of people is another.
It's a whole different beast.
How do you actually run this gauntlet in real time without it falling apart? Who keeps the time? Who enforces the rules when someone inevitably tries to give a note?
Someone always tries.
Next time, we are going to dive into the exact step-by-step mechanics of the peer review in action. And trust me, the rules for running the room are stricter and more brilliant than you can imagine. Until then, remember that passenger in the car. Don't just tell the driver they're going the wrong way. Take the map, do the work, and tell them exactly where to turn. So, what if the single greatest obstacle to improving your business, your writing, or even just your ideas, isn't a lack of talent at all? What if it's actually the very feedback you are asking for?
Oh, wow. I mean, that is a really terrifying thought to entertain.
Right. It goes against everything.
It does, primarily because we are entirely, conditioned to believe the exact opposite. We are taught that the path to excellence is paved with red ink, that you literally cannot build something great without first having someone point out every single flaw in its foundation.
We are raised with that from day one. I mean, think about it. From grade school all the way up to the corporate boardroom, the process is basically always the same.
Yep.
You submit a draft, you hold your breath, and you just wait for someone, a teacher, a manager, a client, to just totally tear it apart so you can painstakingly rebuild it.
Because we assume that finding out what is wrong with our work is the absolute only way to make it right.
Exactly. But what if banning criticism completely, completely outlawing it in the room is the actual secret to explosive creativity and breakthrough results? Okay, let's unpack this.
It's going to require a massive paradigm shift for a lot of people.
Oh, for sure.
But when you look at how high-performing creator teams are actually functioning when they operate at their peak, well, the results of removing that critical element are undeniably powerful. You start moving at a velocity that traditional feedback loops simply cannot handle.
Right. So in this deep dive, we're exploring a really revolutionary concept. It's the transition from criticism to creativity. And we're going to look really closely at how a highly specialized system called the peer review replaces those traditional, ego-driven critiques with a rapid, positive, and hyper-efficient process.
And while a lot of this methodology comes from the world of elite copywriting, the mechanics of it matter for absolutely anyone in business or management or entrepreneurship.
Because understanding this process will show you how to turn B-level ideas into A-level assets in under 30 minutes. I mean, it saves time, it saves money, and honestly, maybe most importantly, it saves a whole lot of bruised egos along the way.
Bruised egos are, honestly, they're the hidden tax on any collaborative project.
Yeah.
The traditional method of reviewing work is just fundamentally broken. Most of us just don't realize it because we've never known any other way.
You just accept the pain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We sit in conference rooms for 2 hours dissecting a single page of text or, a single slide in a deck, and we just accept that friction as the cost of doing business.
So to really understand how radical this shift is, we have to start by setting a scene, because the source material gives this great example. Picture a guy named Tom Hickling.
Okay.
He's standing at the front of a room beside a large chalkboard, and he's running a workshop for a group of copywriters and marketers.
A very classic, high-stakes brainstorming setup.
Very.
The kind of room where people are really eager to prove how smart they are.
Yes. The air is just thick with ambition. So Tom asks the room for headline ideas. But he enforces one strict, unbending rule for the session. No critical remarks allowed.
Okay, setting boundaries.
Right. So they begin. A recently hired marketing assistant sitting way in the back of the room raises their hand and suggests the headline. They say, "How to cash in on the technology boom."
Not bad.
Tom writes it up on the chalkboard. Then he turns back to the room and asks for another one.
And this is precisely where decades of academic and corporate conditioning just violently kick in.
Oh, it is instantaneous. One of the senior copywriters in the room raises his hand, and you can just imagine the posture feeling very experienced, very authoritative, and he says, "I think it would be better if that headline were more specific."
Which, to anyone who has ever sat in a corporate review meeting, sounds like a completely normal, actually helpful contribution. It sounds like leadership, really.
Right. It sounds incredibly helpful. It sounds like the exact kind of feedback you pay a senior copywriter to give. But Tom immediately stops him. He points to the board and points out that this statement is a criticism, not a suggestion.
Wow.
Yeah, and the senior copywriter gets visibly frustrated. You can picture the flesh creaking up his neck. He argues back, insisting, "It is a suggestion. I'm suggesting we take that headline and make it more specific."
Of course he does. Defensiveness kicks in immediately.
But Tom holds his ground completely. He looks at the senior copywriter and says, "Okay, give me an example of what you mean."
Oh, that is the pivot point right there.
Yeah.
He forces the shift from abstract theory to concrete creation.
And that is incredibly uncomfortable for the person giving the feedback.
Because suddenly the senior copywriter actually has to think. He has to do the work instead of just, sitting back and judging the work.
The room gets super quiet. Finally, he offers, "How to make 450% on the coming boom in cyber technology." And Tom writes it down on the board and says, "That is a suggestion."
What's really fascinating here is the underlying psychology of that exchange. When you look at the old school critical method, which is literally a centuries-old system of breaking things down to find their faults, it inevitably creates chaos.
Yeah, it creates arguments.
Right, it creates theoretical debates like, what do we mean by specific? Is 450% too specific? It breeds intense defensiveness. That senior copywriter felt attacked because his so-called helpful critique was rejected.
But his critique was actually just intellectual destruction.
Exactly. He was tearing down the assistant's idea without offering a bridge to a better one. By demanding only positive, specific copy suggestions, Tom shifted the energy of that entire room entirely toward creativity. The mental energy went from, how is this wrong, to what is the exact wording that makes this right?
I was thinking about this dynamic, and it's basically the exact same physiological and psychological response as being a backseat driver.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. Like if you are behind the wheel navigating traffic and your passenger says, "You're driving terribly, you are way too erratic," that is pure criticism.
Absolutely.
What happens? Your heart rate spikes, You get defensive, you grip the steering wheel tighter, and you instantly want to argue about how the car in front of you slammed on its brakes. You completely stop focusing on the road and start focusing on defending your pride.
You're not trying to drive better, you're trying to win the argument.
Exactly. But if the passenger simply says, take the next left, that is a suggestion. It's an actionable alternative. You don't argue with it. You just evaluate the road, check your mirrors, and decide if turning left gets you closer to your destination.
Because you're driving terribly doesn't actually give the driver the tools to improve the situation. It merely identifies a flaw and drops it in their lap. Take the next left provides an actual solution.
Yeah.
In a business setting, identifying flaws is cheap. It is incredibly easy to sit back and point out why an idea might not work. Providing solutions, actual executable solutions, requires genuine mental labor. The reason people default to criticism is that it feels like work, but it doesn't require the vulnerability of putting your own idea out there to be judged.
Wait, hold on, though. Banning negative criticism makes total sense. I mean, we all hate being torn down. We all hate the red ink. But what about positive feedback? Like, if I'm running a team and someone writes a phenomenal hook, why can't I say, wow, I really love that headline. It's incredibly catchy. Surely that builds morale.
You would certainly think so.
Yeah.
But the methodology here is ruthless about this. Even positive comments are completely banned in this peer review process.
Wait, really? Why ban praise? Praise makes people feel good. It validates the effort.
Because praise is still an evaluation. It is still a theoretical comment hovering above the work rather than doing the work. Think about what happens in a room when someone says, I really like that headline. The natural human response, especially in a competitive corporate environment, is for someone else to chime in and say, well, I actually didn't like it because it felt a little too aggressive.
Oh, I see.
Suddenly, you have provoked an unnecessary discussion. You are now debating the merits of the copy, exploring people's feelings about the copy, rather than actually improving the copy itself.
You've completely derailed the train.
Completely. Positive feedback takes up valuable time and shifts the focus back to subjective opinions. And opinions are the enemy of speed. The rule has to be absolute to work. Only actionable, specific copy suggestions are allowed. No comments, no critiques, no praise.
It's just business.
Yes, if you like something, you nod and move on. If you want to change it, you provide the exact words to change it to.
It is incredibly strict, but you can instantly see how much wasted breath it eliminates from a meeting. If you think about the last collaborative meeting you were in, probably 80% of the talking was just people verbally processing their opinions.
Easily 80%.
So for anyone listening who wants to apply this tomorrow, try banning all theoretical comments in your next review session. Force your team to only offer direct, usable alternatives.
And that applies to everything, not just writing.
Right. If your lead designer puts up a mock-up, the team cannot say, it feels a bit cluttered. That's a critique. They have to say, remove the hero image on the left and double the font size of the header. It completely changes the required brain power in the room.
It forces everyone to take responsibility for the solution, rather than just acting as a judge of the problem. When you eliminate the role of the critic, you force everyone to become a creator. And that is a very, very different intellectual muscle.
Yeah, that shift from critic to creator leads us into a massive structural question, though. If you aren't allowed to comment on an idea, you aren't allowed to debate it, and you aren't even allowed to praise it.
Right.
How do you actually evaluate if the work in front of you is any good?
I mean, you still need to know if the draft is working.
You have to replace that subjective, messy debate with a standardized, objective measurement. You need a metric that bypasses the intellect entirely.
And the system does this using a very strict numerical scale. It's a 1.0 to 4.0 grading system.
But these numbers aren't just arbitrary star ratings like you'd see on Yelp. No, not at all. The definitions for each decimal are incredibly specific and tied directly to the reader's physical and emotional reaction.
This is where we move away from literary critique and straight into behavioral science.
Okay, let's break down the scale. So, a 1.0 means the copy generates a strongly negative emotion. You read it, and your immediate instinct is to toss the promotion in the garbage, delete the email, or click off the video.
It's an active rejection. It actually offends your sensibilities or feels so entirely irrelevant that it genuinely causes frustration.
Right. It makes you mad that you even spent 3 seconds looking at it.
Exactly.
Then you have a 2.0. This is a neutral emotional reaction. You read it, you don't hate it, it doesn't make you angry, but you probably wouldn't read on. It's just, It exists, but it doesn't hook you.
And in many ways, the 2.0 is the most dangerous score you can possibly get.
Wait, why is a 2.0 more dangerous than a 1.0? 1.0 is literally anger?
Because a 1.0 at least provoked a reaction. You made the reader feel something, even if it was annoyance. You can sometimes pivot a strong negative emotion into a strong positive one just by tweaking the angle.
Oh, that makes sense.
But apathy. Apathy costs companies millions of dollars every single day. A 2.0 means your messaging is entirely invisible. And the danger is that in a traditional review room, a 2.0 often survives because no one strongly objects to it.
It's inoffensive.
Right. It's safe, it's polite, and polite marketing goes completely ignored in the real world.
Wow, that is such a sharp point. We settle for 2.0 all the time because it doesn't offend the legal department.
Yep.
Okay, so moving up the scale, a 3.0 means you have a positive reaction. You would keep reading, but you are reading with some skepticism. You are interested, but your guard is still up. You have doubts about the claims being made.
You are leaning in, but your arms are still crossed.
Perfect visual. That's exactly it. And finally, the Holy Grail, a 4.0. This is a strongly positive bet response. It creates an urgent, almost involuntary feeling that makes you want to keep reading. You are thinking, this is really good. I need to know what happens next. I need to know what this product is.
Notice how all of those definitions, the anger of the 1.0, the apathy of the 2.0, the skepticism of the 3.0, and the urgency of the 4.0, they are entirely tied to emotion and action.
Right. None of them mention grammar.
None of them. None of them ask the reviewer to evaluate the structure of the argument or the elegance of the prose.
You know what this is like? This is exactly like swiping on a dating app.
Oh, totally.
When you are swiping left or right on a profile, you are not sitting there thoughtfully analyzing the grammatical choices in their bio. You aren't calculating the focal length of the camera lens used in their photo or evaluating the structural integrity of their jawline.
No, you'd never have time.
You are measuring your immediate, unfiltered emotional pulse. Yes or no. It is a pure millisecond gut reaction.
That is precisely the mechanism at play here, and it leverages how human beings actually make decisions. If we look at the cognitive science behind consumer behavior, a well-written lead, a truly great hook, does two things simultaneously.
Okay.
It stimulates emotional prejudices, and it provokes unconscious feelings. Consumers, broadly speaking, buy on emotion and justify with logic later.
Right.
They click on an article because the headline made them angry or curious or greedy. They don't click on it because they admired the use of an Oxford comma.
We think we are these highly rational creatures, but really we are just reacting to stimuli.
Completely. And the problem with traditional feedback is that the moment you ask someone in a meeting, what do you think of this draft, you activate their intellect.
They put on their critic hat.
Exactly. They want to sound smart to their boss and their peers. They feel obligated to find a technical flaw just to justify their presence in the room. So they lean back and say, well, syntactically, I find the third paragraph a bit passive, and perhaps the transition is clunky.
And they completely miss the point, because no actual customer in the real world has ever, in the history of commerce, thrown away a sales letter or closed a web page because they consciously identified a passive verb.
Never.
They toss it because it didn't make them feel anything. They toss it because it was a 2.0. So this 1 to 4 scale forces the reviewers to turn off their intellect and tap into that raw, primal, consumer-level feeling. It stops them from being editors and forces them to be the audience.
It creates a protective barrier around the raw emotional impact of the work. And to assure the integrity of this scale, the system enforces a strict mathematical threshold for what actually gets to survive the room.
Right. They are incredibly hardcore about the math on this. In the system, once everyone in the room reads the piece and gives their score, say, you go around and it's a 3, a 2.5, a 4, and a 3.5, the tabulator averages those numbers out. And the rule is that most copy needs to hit a 2.8 average to even be worth fixing.
And honestly, a 2.8 is a really high bar when you consider that a 3.0 means I want to read more. It means the baseline reaction of the room has to be significantly better than apathetic before you even try to improve it.
And if it scores below that 2.8 average, let's say it gets a 2.6, what happens?
The session is completely aborted.
Just like that.
Just like that, you do not pass go. You do not spend 30 minutes trying to wordsmith the headline. You scrap the core concept and you start entirely over from scratch.
Wow.
Now, it is worth noting that some master copywriters, like a guy named Jack Ford, who operates at the absolute highest levels of the industry, they use a slightly lower threshold, like a 2.5. But that is only because their personal skill level allows them to salvage a wider range of material. For most teams, the 2.8 average is the absolute line of death.
That feels brutal to the person who wrote it, but it also feels Incredibly liberating.
It is the ultimate antidote to the sunk cost fallacy.
Expand on that. How does this fix the sunk cost fallacy?
Well, in traditional corporate settings, an entire team might spend 4 hours in a room trying to fix a fundamentally flawed presentation just because someone already spent 2 weeks building the slide deck.
Oh, I've been in those meetings.
Right. They see the effort that went into it, so they feel obligated to massage it into something workable. They're polishing a 2.1 concept, basically hoping they can turn it into a 4.0 through sheer force of editing.
But you can't edit a bad premise into a great one.
Exactly. The 1 to 4 scale and that hard 2.8 cutoff gives the room empirical permission to walk away from a bad idea without making it personal.
It removes the personal attack entirely. It's no longer the manager saying, I think your idea is bad and you failed. It's the manager saying, the average emotional resonance of this hook is a 2.4. We have a rule that we don't work on anything below a 2.8, so the data says we need to start fresh.
The data becomes the bad guy, not the boss.
It depersonalizes the failure, which ironically makes people much more willing to take big creative risks in their next draft because they know if it fails, it just gets a low number and they move on. There is no lingering shame.
Right. There's no 30-minute lecture on why it was bad.
So if you are listening to this and thinking about your own team dynamics, the immediate application is to stop asking your peers, what do you think of this? You are just inviting useless, time-consuming intellectual debates that lead nowhere.
Absolutely nowhere.
Instead, ask them to read it and immediately rate their gut emotional reaction from 1 to 4. If the average isn't close to a 3, don't waste time debating how to fix the fonts. Throw the concept away and find a better angle. It will save you countless hours of circular conversations.
And it forces you to focus your energy only on the ideas that already have a natural pulse.
Now, we need to clarify what exactly is being reviewed when these groups sit down, because they are not spending their 30-minute session reading a 50-page business plan or a 20-page sales letter or, watching a full 40-minute webinar.
No, definitely not.
They are hyper-focusing their entire review process on one specific element, the lead.
The lead is the tip of the spear. It is a highly concentrated, incredibly vital piece of the overall architecture.
To put parameters around it, the lead is defined as the envelope teaser if you are sending physical direct mail, the main headline, and the first 200 to 400 words of the body text.
Right.
Or if it's a digital format, it's the subject line, the header, and maybe the first scroll of the web page. Basically, it is the first 1 or 2 pages, maximum. That tiny fraction of the work is the absolute only thing they are reviewing and scoring in this highly structured session.
And the rationale for hyper-focusing all of this brain power on the first 400 words is undeniable when you look at the math of human attention.
It really is.
The lead is the absolute most important part of any promotion, any article, any pitch deck. It is the ultimate gatekeeper. It determines, literally in a matter of seconds, if a busy, distracted, skeptical reader will continue, or if they will trash the message entirely and move on with their lives.
It is the hook. If the hook doesn't set, it just doesn't matter how good the rest of the fishing line is.
Precisely. And the harsh reality of persuasion is that a poorly written lead kills the sale immediately, even if the rest of the argument is an absolute masterpiece.
Yeah.
You could have the most stellar product details, the most compelling pricing, undeniable proof, incredible testimonials, but no one will ever see any of that if they don't get past the first 400 words. It simply ceases to exist.
It's invisible.
Invisible.
Yeah.
Conversely, a great lead that grips the reader emotionally, that scores a pure 4.0 on that scale, can actually carry a reader through a relatively mediocre argument later on. If you hook them deep enough, they will forgive a lot of structural flaws.
The leverage in any communication is heavily, heavily weighted at the front end.
Yes.
Okay, but I have a logistical question about how they actually execute this, because the guidelines for the system mention a detail that seems completely contradictory.
Oh, I know what you're going to ask.
It dictates that the reviewers are sometimes given 600 to 800 words of the text to read before the session starts, even though they are only going to formally review, score, and suggest changes for the first 200 to 400 words.
Right.
Why are you giving them the extra text to read if the lead is the only thing that actually matters? Isn't that just wasting everyone's time?
It does seem like a contradiction at first glance, but it's actually a very calculated safety net for the creative process.
How so?
There is a fascinating psychological phenomenon that happens when people write. Very often, when a writer sits down and types out a mediocre lead, it isn't because they lack a great idea. It's because they were just warming up.
Oh, like stretching before a run.
Exactly. They're clearing their throat, intellectually speaking. They have to write 300 words of generic background information just to get their brain into the flow state. And frequently, because of that throat clearing, they actually bury a much better, much more compelling, highly emotional idea deeper down in the text.
Oh, I do that all the time.
Everyone does. The real hook might not actually appear until paragraph 6 or 7.
It's the classic journalism mistake, burying the lead.
Yes, exactly. The writer is too close to the work to realize they buried it. By having the review group read a bit further than that strict 400-word boundary, giving them a view up to 800 words, it allows the collective mind of the group to spot that hidden gem.
I see.
Someone in the room reading along might give the first 400 words a 2.5, but then they hit page 3 and realize, wait, this concept right here about the cyber technology boom? This is incredible.
And then, during the suggestion phase, instead of trying to fix the boring first paragraph, their actionable suggestion is just, take paragraph 7 and move it to the very top. Make that the headline.
Precisely. You read just far enough to see if the writer accidentally hid the real gold further down the mine shaft.
Yeah.
You aren't editing those later paragraphs. You are just mining them for the real lead.
That makes total sense. You are surveying the territory to find the actual starting line. So if you are building a presentation or writing an important email today, your practical takeaway is about resource allocation. Disproportionately invest your team's review time and cognitive energy on the hook, the intro, the lead of your project. If you have an hour to review a slide deck, spend 45 minutes making sure slide 1 and slide 2 are a 4.0 emotional hook. Because if you lose the boardroom at the start, the remaining 50 slides of data are functionally invisible.
The lead is the ultimate bottleneck. If the lead fails, the entire project fails, regardless of the quality of the product.
All right, so we have the core rules established. We have the no criticism rule ensuring positive momentum. We have the 1 to 4 scale providing objective emotional data, and we are hyper-focused entirely on the first 400 words. Let's talk about the room itself.
The logistics.
Right. Let's talk about the ideal peer review environment, specifically the mechanics of the small group. Because you can't just send a draft out to your entire company on Slack and expect this to work. Who is actually doing this grading and suggesting?
The logistics of the room are deeply intentional. It is not a free-for-all, and it is definitely not an open town hall.
The ideal group size for this process is strictly limited to 4 to 6 people, no more, no less. And they have very specifically defined roles that keep the machine running.
Right.
You have a leader whose only job is to enforce the rules, relentlessly cutting off criticism, demanding specific suggestions. You have a tabulator whose role is purely mechanical. They sit there with a calculator, punch in the 1 to 4 scores as people say them, and announce the average. No opinions, just math.
Crucial role.
You have a timekeeper, keeping a hawkeye on the clock to ensure the entire process from reading to final vote never exceeds 30 minutes. And crucially, sitting right there in the mix, you have the copywriter, the person whose work is actually on the chopping block.
It is constructed to function like a very lean, specialized strike team. Everyone knows their job, and there is absolutely no room for bloat.
But here's what I don't understand about the personnel. If I am trying to perfect a multi-million-dollar marketing campaign or a make-or-break investor pitch, my instinct is to put the heaviest hitters in the room.
Naturally.
Right. I want the chief marketing officer, the VP of sales, and the most senior copywriter I have. But this system actually advocates for bringing in absolute neophytes. They want people like the brand new marketing assistant from our first example in the room, voting alongside the veterans. Why on earth would you let an intern grade a $1 million headline?
This brings us to a really profound point about what expertise actually means in the context of consumer communication. The system strongly emphasizes that neophytes, people with absolutely zero copywriting, marketing, or industry experience, are highly capable of rating copy on this numeric scale.
Still sounds crazy.
In fact, they're often better at it than the executive.
Why? How could they possibly be better?
Because they represent the actual consumer. We have to talk about the curse of knowledge. When you become a senior executive or an industry veteran, you undergo a permanent cognitive shift. A chief marketing officer physically cannot look at a piece of copy with fresh eyes.
They know too much.
Exactly. When they read a headline, their brain is instantly running a complex background program. Does this align with our Q3 brand guidelines? Does this use the SEO keywords we agreed on? Is the syntactic structure matching our new agency's theoretical approach?
So they are evaluating the strategy, not experiencing the emotion.
Exactly. Their expertise actively blocks their ability to feel a raw, visceral reaction. But a neophyte, the 22-year-old assistant from accounting, they aren't burdened by any of that industry baggage. They just read the 400 words and tell you honestly if it made them want to pull out their credit card and buy the product.
They are just a regular person.
They're the purest proxy for your actual market.
If they just feel the 1 to 4 scale, they don't overthink it.
And what the creators of this system found, time and time again, is that the gut reaction scores of these complete neophytes consistently align with the final polished scores of 20-year veterans. The raw instinct of the beginner often arrives at the exact same conclusion that takes the expert an hour of deep analysis to reach.
That is wild, but it makes so much sense when you realize you are selling to the public, not to other marketing professors.
Right.
And keeping the group strictly to that 4 to 6 person limit isn't just for random preference either. It aligns with decades of psychological and business studies. They even reference Malcolm Gladwell's concept in The Tipping Point, noting that there are natural biological limits to the size of effective working groups.
Yes, like the rule of 150, or Dunbar's number, which talks about social cohesion. But for active problem solving, the number is much, much smaller. Once a group grows larger than 6 people, you inevitably invite destructive group dynamics.
Like what?
Well, you get social loafing, where people stop participating because they assume someone else will speak up. You get groupthink, where people just defer to the highest paid person in the room. And most obviously, the meetings just drag on forever because there are too many variables.
It stops being a strike team and it becomes a committee. And as the old saying goes, nothing great was ever written by a large committee.
Never.
A committee's goal is consensus and safety, not explosive creativity.
A committee will round off all the sharp edges of an idea until it becomes a perfect, frictionless 2.0.
Ugh, the dreaded 2.0. Now, you mentioned earlier that the copywriter has to be in the room, and I want to dig into that because in the old days, being in the review room as the writer was like being tied to a chair while people threw tomatoes at you.
It was off.
You just sat there, took the beating, and scribbled down notes on how terrible you were. But in this peer review system, the writer is active. They must rate their own copy aloud, along with everyone else. They are the ones actually making the on-the-spot revisions on a laptop or a whiteboard as the suggestions are approved. And they are the ones who verbally commit to finalizing these new changes within 24 hours.
The psychology behind keeping the writer active is brilliant. In a traditional setting, when a boss hands a writer a document bleeding with red ink and says, "Fix this," the writer feels completely alienated from the work. It is no longer their creation. It is a chore assigned to them by an authority figure.
It's just homework at that point.
Exactly. But in this system, because the writer is physically implementing the changes in real time, and because their own voice counts in the 1 to 4 scoring, they retain a profound, unbroken sense of ownership over the final product.
It completely flips the power dynamic. It's no longer a boss demanding compliance. It's a group of peers handing the writer puzzle pieces and saying, hey, does this piece fit better here? The writer is still the master builder.
And because they own those revisions, their natural defensiveness drops to 0.
Because no one attacked them.
Right? They don't have to defend their ego because no one attacked it. They transform from a defensive, beaten-down employee into an excited, energized collaborator who is just trying to build the best possible puzzle.
It shifts the entire emotional climate of the room from adversarial to cooperative. The writer feels supported by a team that is actively trying to help them succeed, rather than judged by a tribunal looking for their mistakes.
And the speed at which they can work when they feel supported is incredible.
So think about the meetings you are running this week. If you want high-velocity feedback without the tiers, build diverse review teams, pull people from outside the department, grab someone from sales or HR or the front desk so you can get a true, unfiltered market read.
Yep.
And fiercely guard the door. Keep these groups small, 4 to 6 people maximum, to maintain that strike team agility and speed.
It is the optimal formula for stripping away ego and replacing it with pure momentum.
Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. And this is where we really see the actual engine of this process fire up. It's the better, worse, or neutral voting system. We've talked about how they get the score and how they ask for suggestions, but how do they decide which suggestion wins?
Right.
I want to walk through a real-time example to show just how breathtakingly fast and painless this really is.
This is the moment where the rubber truly meets the road. This is where theory becomes execution.
Right. So let's look at an actual case study. There is an example of a financial e-letter called the AWAI Golden Thread. The copywriter walks into the small group of 5 people and brings in their drafted lead. The original headline they read out loud is, "How Craigslist Can Help You Make Money."
Okay. It's a decent, clear promise. You know what it's about, but perhaps it's a bit dry. It lacks a certain magnitude.
Exactly. It's functional, but not thrilling. So the group of 5 people reads the first 400 words under that headline. They go around the table and give their gut reactions on the 1 to 4 scale. The tabulator frantically punches the numbers into the calculator, hits equals, and announces the average. It comes out to a 2.74.
Oh, man. That is painful. Just a hair under the 2.8 threshold.
Agonizingly close. In a strict room, you might scrap it. But because it is so close to the wire, the leader makes a judgment call to see if it can be tipped over the edge. The leader immediately cuts off any sighs or complaints and asks the room for specific copy suggestions for that headline.
Only solutions.
Right. One participant raises their hand with suggestion 1. They offer 10 billion reasons to make money with Craigslist.
Oh, I like that. They've injected specificity and a massive sense of scale. 10 billion reasons is much stickier than how it can help.
It's a solid upgrade. Now, here's where the magic of the system reveals itself. The leader does not ask the room, okay, what do we think of that suggestion? How does 10 billion feel to everyone?
Because that would invite a 10-minute debate.
Exactly. Instead, the leader simply points to each person and asks 3 words: better, worse, or neutral. And they go around the room rapid fire. Person 1, better. Person 2, better. Person 3, better. Person 4, better.
Unanimous agreement in under 10 seconds.
Exactly. But they don't stop the engine there. The leader asks if there are any other suggestions on the table. Another person speaks up with suggestion 2, 10 billion reasons to love Craig.
Interesting. They drop the list and make money. It adds a bit more intrigue. It plays on curiosity. It's punchier.
It makes you wonder, like, who is Craig and why do 10 billion people love him? So the leader runs the rapid fire vote again. Better, worse, or neutral. They go around the table. The votes come back. Slightly better, better, better.
So we have 2 clear winners, both significantly better than the original 2.74 headline. But there's nuance here. Suggestion 2 has a slightly better mixed in. How does the system handle a room where there isn't perfect mathematical unanimity?
This is where the rules are rigidly designed to protect the copywriter's autonomy. The system dictates that the copywriter must make any change that receives universal, unanimous approval from the room.
Makes sense.
If every single person says, suggestion 1 is better, your personal ego as the writer doesn't matter. The market has spoken. You make the change. Conversely, they absolutely must not make changes that receive primarily negative or worse responses, even if the boss is the one who suggested it.
That rule is a vital shield. It protects the integrity of the work from bad ideas disguised as authority.
But here's the genius part, the part that makes writers actually love this system. For mixed reviews, let's say a suggestion gets a better, 2 neutrals, and a worse. The tie goes to the runner. The copywriter gets to decide entirely on their own.
I love that.
The writer holds the ultimate tie-breaking vote. If they love the suggestion, they keep it. If they hate it, they scrap it. This single rule guarantees that they maintain their sense of ownership over the final product. They never feel like a victim of a committee.
This voting mechanism completely bypasses the dreaded design-by-committee trap that destroys so much corporate creativity. There's no agonizing over the why. No one is asked to articulate why they feel 10 billion reasons to love Craig is better.
Because the why doesn't matter.
It doesn't. It prevents those massive ego battles where 2 senior executives debate semantics for 20 minutes.
That's fair.
Because there is literally no space allowed for debate. It is just a rapid-fire tally of immediate gut reactions. It treats the creative editing process less like a subjective art critique and much more like an agile software development sprint. Just the code, see if it compiles, better, worse, or neutral. Move on.
It is breathtakingly fast. A meeting that used to take 2 hours of emotional exhaustion is now done in 22 minutes of high-energy collaboration.
It's a game changer.
So the next time someone in your office suggests a change to a project, whether it's a line of code, a graphic, or a sales pitch, do not open the floor for a debate on the merits of the idea. Just ask the room, better, worse, or neutral, tally the votes, make the change if it wins, and keep moving. Maintain that high momentum and keep your meetings under that strict 30-minute mark.
It fundamentally respects everyone's time while maximizing the collective creative output. It honors the people in the room by not wasting their lives in circular arguments.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. We have traced the journey from Tom Hickling's tense chalkboard experiment banning all criticism to the ruthless efficiency of the 1 to 4 dating app style emotional scoring.
We really have.
We explored the strategic necessity of hyper-focusing all your energy on the first 400 words of the lead, the psychological safety of building a 4 to 6 person strike team filled with neophytes, and finally, the rapid-fire, better, worse, or neutral voting system that kills design by committee. Let's bring all these threads together.
If we step back and synthesize everything we've dissected, the core insight of this entire methodology is profound. The transition from criticism to creativity isn't just about changing the rules of a meeting. It is a fundamental cultural shift from intellectual destruction to emotional construction.
Oh, I love that phrasing, intellectual destruction versus emotional construction. That perfectly captures the vibe shift in the room.
That's really the heart of it. The traditional critical method, the boss with a red pen, the endless feedback loops, the hunt for flaws, is inherently an arrogant process.
Yes, it really is.
It assumes that one expert, sitting in isolation, can logic their way into understanding exactly what a vast, unpredictable emotional market wants. It relies on breaking down words, hunting for syntactic faults, and basically punishing mistakes. But the pure logic system we've outlined today is deeply humble.
Humble, that's a great word for it.
It acknowledges that no one person can logic their way to a perfect emotional hook. Instead, it relies on the collective, unfiltered emotional response of a small, diverse group of real people.
It replaces the bladed ego of the traditional critic with the harsh, objective data of the 1 to 4 scale.
Yes. And crucially, it replaces vague, demoralizing complaints with actionable, specific solutions. By doing this, it fundamentally rewires the human dynamic in the workplace. It turns writers, designers, and creators from defensive, beaten-down employees hiding behind their armor into excited, empowered collaborators who are eager to iterate.
Which is how you actually arrive at breakthrough results. You stop fighting each other over opinions and you start building together based on reactions. So to loop all the way back to the provocative question we started with, the greatest obstacle to your work might very well be the critical feedback you've been begging for.
It really might be.
The moment you are brave enough to completely eliminate the criticism from your process, you suddenly make room for actual high-velocity creativity.
It is a brilliantly simple set of rules, but it is incredibly difficult to put into practice until you consciously rewire your corporate habits. The urge to criticize is deep, but once you commit to this system, the speed and quality of the results are entirely undeniable.
Now you know exactly how to build a bulletproof, emotionally gripping lead that hooks your reader by the throat in the first 400 words using this peer review system. But what happens once they are hooked?
The next challenge.
Right. How do you make sure the rest of your presentation, the massive body of your pitch or your article, doesn't slowly ruin that amazing momentum you just built? Well, maintaining that energy requires hunting down 3 very specific, very dangerous traps hiding in your writing. And next time, we're going to show you exactly how to find them. So what if you could take a completely mediocre, middle-of-the-road piece of writing and transform it into a $1 million blockbuster in exactly 30 minutes?
And do it without ever uttering a single word of criticism, which, sounds completely impossible.
Right. It basically defies everything we are taught about the creative process.
Oh, totally. We are completely conditioned to believe that the only path to great writing, or really great anything, is through just agonizing pain and relentless critique.
Yeah, you bleed on the page, and then your editor or your boss or some committee bleeds red ink all over your work.
Exactly. The underlying assumption is always that criticism is the fire that forges the sword,
But in today's deep dive, we are completely destroying that assumption.
We really are. We're looking at a concept from Michael Masterson and Mike Palmer's book, Copy Logic.
Which is phenomenal, by the way. Specifically, we're going deep into Chapter 4, which outlines this unbreakable, heavily engineered system they call the peer review.
And you are about to learn how to instantly measure and improve the emotional impact of any persuasive message.
Shifting entirely away from that subjective, ego-bruising feedback into rapid-fire collaboration.
And, this isn't just an exercise for professional writers. This matters profoundly for anyone in business or marketing or entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. Because capturing and holding a reader's attention in those first 30 seconds, that is the absolute difference between a thriving enterprise and one that gets tossed straight into the trash.
That window is just so unforgiving. If you lose them right there at the start, The best products or service in the world simply does not matter.
It really doesn't. But before we get into the mechanics of how this peer review system actually functions, we have to look at the disease it's trying to cure.
Oh, the old way of doing things. It's painful.
It is. The source material opens with this incredibly vivid fable about Rex, the caveman copywriter.
Poor Rex.
Right. It perfectly captures the standard critical method that runs almost every corporate and academic environment today.
So Rex is hired by his tribal chief, Humongous,
Great name.
yeah, to chisel a promotional message onto these massive stone tablets.
And Rex just chips away for 6 weeks. He hauls the heavy tablets over to the chief, and Humongous looks at it and says, this is good, but there are a few things I think you should change.
And to emphasize his point, Humongous literally hits Rex over the head with a club.
Bam. Just clubs him. And when Rex, who is now bleeding and confused, asks why he's being beaten, the chief basically says, I club you to drive the point home.
You can't expect to be a great writer without a good clubbing. That's the quote.
And all the chief's advisors just nod and applaud this management style.
Of course they do. So Rex goes back, nurses his wounds, rewrites the tablets, comes back, and gets beaten again by a different advisor.
Who has a completely different opinion, right?
Exactly. So he goes back, rewrites again, and this cycle just drags on for 6 whole months.
6 months. At the end of it, he's battered, his family is starving, and the tribe decides that they aren't even going to test his copy.
They just shelve it and hire a new guy.
It's a fable, obviously, but the psychological reality of it is barely an exaggeration.
Barely. I mean, the critical method, which universities have taught for centuries, is fundamentally an exercise in fault finding.
Yeah, you take an essay or a pitch deck or a marketing email and you break it down into its constituent parts.
You find the mistakes and you point them out.
In a modern office, that looks like a Google Doc shared with 12 people, filled with 60 passive-aggressive comments in the margins.
Oh, the margin comments. It's literal intellectual clubbing.
That is exactly what it is. It's inherently negative, and it's incredibly slow. It often takes weeks or months.
And it's highly biased toward whoever holds the most authority in the room. The boss's comment carries the most weight, even if it's wrong.
But the worst part is how unreliable it is. You can spend a month revising a piece of copy through a committee, addressing everyone's individual critiques, and actually make the final product perform significantly worse.
Because you've compromised the core message to appease a dozen different subjective opinions. You've just watered it down.
Exactly. It becomes this bland Frankenstein monster of a document.
So the authors realized that if the old method depends on subjective opinion and destruction, a new method had to depend on measurable response and creation.
And that is where the peer review system comes in.
The very first thing you have to understand about this system is the extreme physical constraint it operates under.
The 30-minute limit.
Yes, the entire review process is strictly limited to 30 minutes, not an hour, not 45 minutes. 30 minutes.
And it focuses exclusively on the lead.
Right. And we should define that for those who might use different terminology in their specific industries.
Good call. When we say lead, we are talking about the tip of the spear.
The headline, the subheadline, and the first 200 to 400 words of the copy. That's it.
But hold on. If the lead is the single most important part of the entire funnel, the thing that determines if they read the rest of the message or throw it away, why cap the review at 30 minutes?
Yeah, you'd think you'd want more time.
Shouldn't you spend days agonizing over the most critical part?
See, that is the trap of the old method. Agonizing over it doesn't make it better. It just makes it overworked.
Ah, I see.
The lead has one job. It needs to stimulate an immediate emotional prejudice and provoke an unconscious feeling of desire.
It's an instinctual hook.
Exactly. If you sit in a room for 3 hours debating the logic of a hook, you completely lose touch with the instinctual reaction of a consumer.
Because consumers don't debate logic for 3 hours.
Right. The 30-minute limit prevents overthinking. It forces the group to operate on gut instinct, which is exactly how your actual audience is going to operate when they see the message.
That makes perfect sense. The audience isn't going to spend 3 hours analyzing your headline. They are going to give it 3 seconds.
3 seconds if you're lucking.
So to execute this 30-minute sprint, you can't just invite the whole office.
No, definitely not.
The authors are very specific. You need exactly 4 to 6 people. It's like assembling a Formula One pit stop crew.
There is no time for philosophy. The strict structure creates speed.
But why 4 to 6? Why not 3 or 8? What's the magic in that number?
The source material leans on Malcolm Gladwell's insights in The Tipping Point here. He dives into historical and anthropological evidence regarding the natural limits of human working groups.
Right. Gladwell is famous for the rule of 150, the Dunbar number.
Yeah, but that's about the maximum size of a functional broader social group, like a village or a military company.
Right, right.
But for highly focused, task-oriented group, the mechanics are totally different. The cognitive load of managing communication in a group grows exponentially with every single person you add.
So if you have 8, 10, or 12 people trying to collaborate on a single task.
Communication definitively breaks down. The leader just can't manage the flow.
So what happens? Do people just check out?
Exactly. The majority of people start hiding in the background, mentally checking out, while one or two dominant personalities take over the entire meeting.
I've been in that exact meeting so many times.
We all have. Conversely, if you only have 2 or 3 people, you don't have enough cognitive diversity to generate breakthrough ideas.
It's just an echo chamber.
Right. So 4 to 6 is the anthropological sweet spot. It forces everyone to remain engaged. There's nowhere to hide, but the group is nimble enough to move at lightning speed.
Okay, so you have your 4 to 6 people, but you can't just put them in a room and expect magic.
No, the peer review requires 4 hyper-specific roles to be filled. The structure is rigid.
First, you have a leader, and this is crucial. The leader is not there to be the, boss of the copy.
They aren't the ultimate creative director deciding what sounds best.
Right. Their sole responsibility is to act as a referee. They enforce the rules of the peer review, which we are going to explore, and they have to be absolutely ruthless about shutting down rule breakers.
They protect the process.
Yeah.
Because if the process degrades, you are right back in the cave with Rex getting clubbed.
Getting hit with the Google Doc Club. Then you have the timekeeper.
Oh, this is a fun one.
Their entire purpose is to maintain that relentless 30-minute pace. They are watching the clock, calling out time warnings, and keeping the momentum high.
So nobody has the chance to settle into a philosophical debate.
Exactly. The third role is the tabulator. This person sits there with a literal handheld calculator.
A physical calculator.
Yes. When the group starts shouting out scores, the tabulator calculates the average instantly. No mental math, no pausing to figure out fractions. Just punch the numbers and announce the result.
Which brings us to the 4th required role. And this is where the system completely breaks away from the old critical method.
The copywriter. The person who actually wrote the draft must be physically present in the room.
They have to be there.
They take notes, they answer clarifying questions of fact, and ultimately they're the ones who have to implement the changes.
Now I know what you're thinking.
I am thinking that I have been in corporate review meetings, and if I'm the writer and you put me in a small room with 5 people who are about to judge my work, my defenses are at maximum capacity.
Arms crossed, jaw clenched.
Exactly. I am preparing for battle. Doesn't putting the writer in the room guarantee defensiveness?
Under the old system, yes. It absolutely guarantees a defensive disaster. It's human nature to protect your ego when you feel attacked.
So how is this different?
What the authors discovered is that because of the incredibly strict rules of this specific peer review, the defensiveness doesn't just decrease, it entirely evaporates.
I honestly find that hard to believe. How do you strip the ego out of a writer whose work is being evaluated in real time?
You do it by changing the fundamental nature of the evaluation.
Okay, unpack that for me.
In a traditional meeting, the writer sits there absorbing a barrage of opinions about why their work is flawed. They are the defendant on trial.
Right. Why did you use this word? Why is this sentence so long?
Exactly. But in the peer review, the writer watches a group of people actively, collaboratively co-create solutions.
Oh, that's a huge shift.
The burden of solving the problem shifts from the isolated writer to the collective intelligence of the room.
So the group is handing them solutions instead of complaints.
Yes. When the rules force the group to do that, the writer leaves the room feeling energized, armed with a clear roadmap, rather than feeling like they just survived a firing squad.
Okay, I see how the rules make that possible. But before we get to those rules, let's look at who else is filling out this group of 4 to 6. You wouldn't just want a room full of senior writers, right?
Definitely not. If you pack the room with senior copywriters, you instantly create an echo chamber.
They will inevitably start debating high-level marketing theory, arguing about sentence structure.
And they completely lose sight of how a normal human being reacts to the message. You need deep diversity in the room.
You want a senior executive, sure, but you also want a junior marketer. You want someone from the accounting department.
And the text explicitly emphasizes bringing in someone like a customer service representative.
Now that's interesting. Why the customer service rep? What makes a 22-year-old answering phones just as valuable in this room as a 20-year marketing veteran?
Well, think about what you are actually trying to measure. You aren't evaluating the technical syntax of the writing.
Right, we're not checking grammar.
You are measuring a gut emotional reaction. That 22-year-old customer service rep has been a consumer their entire life. They have at least 10 years of active shopping experience.
Their internal BS meter is fully calibrated.
Probably even more so than the marketing veteran who has spent 2 decades overanalyzing copy.
That makes total sense.
When that junior rep reads a headline, their visceral immediate reaction of, oh, I want to buy this, or this sounds like a scam, is raw, untainted data.
It is highly representative of how your actual target audience will react in the wild.
Precisely.
So if you're managing a team right now and you want to fix a landing page, a pitch deck, or a cold email campaign, don't blast a Google Doc link to a 12-person Slack channel and ask for thoughts.
That is a recipe for endless conflicting opinions.
Grab 4 people from completely different departments, set a hard timer for 30 minutes, assign the roles, and get to work.
Structure is the only thing that prevents time wasting.
But that begs the question, once this diverse group is sitting in the room and the clock starts, how exactly are they evaluating this copy in such a compressed time frame?
This is the metric that drives the whole system. They use a 1.0 to 4.0 emotional rating system.
And again, we're not talking about a grammar check.
We are not checking to see if a comma is in the right place. We are purely measuring the emotional, instinctual gut reaction of the reader.
It's a fundamental paradigm shift. Traditional editing asks, is this sentence structured correctly according to the rules of English?
While the peer review asks, does this sentence generate enough raw desire to make me read the next sentence?
Let's break down this 4-point scale because it is surprisingly nuanced.
It really is.
If a participant gives a piece of copy a 1.0, that translates to trash it immediately. It creates a strongly negative emotion or profound boredom.
Right. A 2.0 means I probably wouldn't read on. It's slightly negative to neutral.
A 3.0 means I would read on, but I have some skepticism or hesitation.
And a 4.0 means I am extremely excited. I am completely hooked. I am definitely reading on.
It is vital to note what is missing here. There is no 5.0.
And they deliberately avoid this standard 1 to 10 scale.
Why avoid a 1 to 10 scale? Everyone uses 1 to 10. It's like the default for everything.
Because a 1 to 10 scale is a coward scale.
A coward scale. I love that.
It gives people too much room to hedge their bets. When people don't want to hurt someone's feelings, but they don't love the work, they default to a 7.
A 7 means nothing.
It's a non-committal shrug. By using a 4-point scale, you force a binary decision.
You are either above the midline, a 3 or a 4, meaning you're leaning toward reading on, or you are below the midline.
A 1 or a 2, meaning you are leaning toward the trash can. It forces the participant to take a hard stance on their emotional reaction.
It's exactly like sorting your mail over the trash can.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Think about it. You walk out to your mailbox, you pull out a stack of envelopes, and you walk straight to the recycling bin in your kitchen.
You hold the stack right over the bin.
You glance at the first envelope for maybe a fraction of a second. Bam. Trash. Bam. Trash.
You see a hand-addressed envelope from a friend. Keep.
You see a slick, glossy flyer offering you a new credit card. Bam. Trash.
Every human being has a highly attuned, absolutely ruthless filter for incoming information.
The 1.0 to 4.0 scale is purely an attempt to measure whether your message survives that brutal half-second over the trash can.
And to get granular, the participants are actually encouraged to use decimal points to express exactly where their gut is pulling them.
Like a 2.8, a 3.5, a 1.9.
Yeah. The leader will simply look at the group and ask, on a 4-point scale, how do you rate this headline?
And the group just goes around the room shouting out their numbers.
The tabulator punches those decimals into the calculator and announces the average.
And this introduces the most ruthless and arguably the most important rule of the entire framework.
The cutoff.
The cutoff. Let's say the tabulator averages the scores for a newly written lead, and the room comes back with a 2.6. What happens?
The process stops.
Just stop.
Completely. If the average score falls below a 2.8, and in some highly advanced copywriting circles they use a 2.5, the review of that copy is immediately aborted.
Wait, they just pack up and end the meeting?
They abandon the draft entirely. The leader will announce, the copy did not meet the minimum score. We will not review this draft today.
Wow.
They might pivot and use the remaining 20 minutes to brainstorm a completely new conceptual angle. but they explicitly do not try to fix the draft they just read.
That feels incredibly harsh. I mean, if it scored a 2.6, it's not a 1.0. It has some merit. Why not spend 15 minutes trying to elevate a 2.6 up to a 3.5?
Because a low average score doesn't mean the adjectives are wrong. It means the fundamental concept, the core premise of the idea, is dead on arrival.
Ah, the foundation is rotten.
Exactly. The hook is either fundamentally boring, completely unbelievable, or deeply confusing. Trying to wordsmith a dead idea is the definition of the sunk cost fallacy.
You are just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic.
Exactly. It wastes the collective brain power of the room. And worse, it tortures the writer who has to keep hacking away at a foundation that is fundamentally broken.
You have to be willing to kill it and start fresh.
You have to.
That alone will save businesses thousands of hours of wasted labor. Stop asking your colleagues if your writing is good.
Good is a subjective, useless metric.
Ask them to rate their immediate emotional desire to keep reading on a scale of 1 to 4. If the average is low, don't tweak the commas, nuke the concept, and build a new one.
Now, there is a fascinating psychological quirk built into this rating phase. Remember how we said the copywriter is in the room?
Yeah, they have to be there.
The rules dictate that the copywriter is required to rate their own copy out loud, right alongside the rest of the group.
When I first read that, it sounded like a terrible idea.
Right. It seems counterintuitive.
If I wrote the copy, wouldn't I just automatically give myself a 4.0 to try and drag the average up?
You might assume that, but the authors found the exact opposite. Writers are remarkably objective and sometimes overly critical once they step back and hear their draft read out loud in a room.
Interesting.
Allowing the writer to rate their own work serves a brilliant psychological function. It gives them agency.
How so? Walk me through that.
Think about the power dynamic. If the writer knows deep down that the draft is weak, forcing them to give it a score allows them to implicitly apologize to the room.
Oh, I see.
If they say out loud, I give this a 2.5, they are signaling, I know this isn't my best work, I am self-aware, I recognize the flaw.
It diffuses the tension immediately.
Completely. Alternatively, if they truly believe they have struck gold, giving it a 3.8 is a display of genuine pride.
In either scenario, it keeps the writer engaged as an equal peer in the process rather than isolating them as a victim waiting for the jury's verdict.
It totally shifts the dynamic. They are no longer the defendant, they are part of the jury.
Okay, so you've done the rating. Let's assume the headline survived. It scored a 2.9. It beat the cutoff.
Now we move into the actual improvement phase, and this is the soul of the CopyLogic system.
The unbreakable rule that acts as the engine of creativity. No criticism, no comments.
This is, without a doubt, the hardest rule for intelligent professionals to follow.
It requires completely rewiring your brain. The rule is an absolute prohibition on negative criticism.
You cannot say this headline is boring. You cannot say this opening sentence feels clunky.
But it goes even further than that. You also cannot give positive criticism.
This is the part people struggle with the most.
You are banned from saying, wow, I really love this promise. It's so powerful.
Wait, why ban positive criticism? If the goal is a positive environment, shouldn't we praise the good parts?
Well, the authors argue that positive criticism is just as damaging to the 30-minute sprint as negative criticism.
First, it wastes precious time.
Second, it creates an artificial halo effect. If the CEO says, I love this sentence, the rest of the room is influenced to view the copy through rose-colored glasses,
Corrupting their honest reaction.
And third, positive criticism almost always devolves into theoretical comments.
And theoretical comments are the third banned item. You are strictly forbidden from offering abstract marketing theory.
You cannot say, I think we need to make the headline more specific.
Or, this paragraph lacks a sense of urgency. Or, the transition here feels abrupt.
So if you ban negative criticism, positive criticism, and theoretical comments, what is actually left?
What are you allowed to say when it's your turn to speak?
Right.
The only thing allowed to leave your mouth is a specific, actionable copy suggestion. Actual replacement words.
You have to speak in the language of the final product.
It forces translation. It forces the critic to do the hard mental labor of translating their vague feeling of dissatisfaction into a concrete solution.
It's exactly like bringing a pot of soup to a potluck dinner.
Okay, I like this.
Imagine you are the chef and someone tastes your soup. You do not want them to stand there and pontificate saying, historically, a great soup requires a delicate balance of salinity to bring out the umami flavors.
Or, I feel like the sodium profile is lacking.
That is useless to the chef. Just hand me the salt.
Hand me the salt.
Give me the specific ingredient that fixes the problem in front of us.
I love that. Hand me the salt. When a marketing director leans back in their chair and says, "This headline is too vague," that is a theoretical comment.
It feels highly intellectual to the person saying it.
They feel like they're adding value, but it is entirely useless to the writer.
Because the writer is left sitting there wondering, how exactly do I make it more specific? Do you want numbers? Do you want a location? Do you want a different adjective?
But if the rule forces the marketing director to provide a specific copy suggestion, they can no longer lean back and critique. They have to lean forward and do the heavy lifting of writing.
Let's ground this with an actual detailed example from the source material so you can see how this radically accelerates the process.
Perfect.
The authors review a direct mail package that was submitted to the group. The original draft's headline was, "Is direct mail dead? A copywriting revolution is happening in the direct mail industry, and it's creating huge, profitable opportunities for copywriters smart enough to see it."
Okay, so let's imagine this scenario under the old critical method. A group of marketers sits around a table.
Someone inevitably points at the phrase huge, profitable opportunities and says, "That's too vague. It sounds like cheap hype. We need to ground it with real numbers."
Then someone else chimes in, "Well, if we use specific numbers, does it sound too scammy? Maybe we should focus on the lifestyle benefits instead of just the money."
And suddenly you have a 15-minute philosophical debate about marketing ethics.
While the writer sits there furiously taking contradictory notes.
The 30-minute clock would run out before they even got past the first paragraph.
But in the peer review system, that entire debate is illegal.
The leader would cut off the first person the second they started saying, "That's too vague."
Instead, a participant recognizes the vagueness, does the mental translation themselves, and simply offers a replacement line.
They say, "I suggest we replace huge, profitable opportunities with, the answer could make you $123,436 in the next 12 months.
Boom. They handed the writer the salt.
They didn't preach about the theory of specificity. They provided the specificity.
And what happens next is where the ego is completely stripped away.
Yes, the voting.
The leader does not open the floor to discuss whether the new suggestion is a good idea.
There is no debate on whether $123,000 sounds too high or too low.
The leader simply turns to the room and asks for a vote using 3 specific options: better, worse, or neutral.
It is a pure, instantaneous gut check. The room just calls it out based on instinct. Better, better, slightly better, neutral.
The mechanics of the vote are fascinating. If a suggestion gets universally positive votes, meaning everyone says better or a combination of better and neutral, the copywriter must make the change.
It is no longer a suggestion. It is a mandate from the room.
The collective intelligence has spoken.
If the suggestion gets all worse votes, it is instantly killed and never spoken of again.
And if it's a mixed bag, some say better, some say worse, the copywriter gets to use their ultimate discretion to accept it, modify it, or ignore it.
This rapid-fire voting mechanism is the ultimate ego stripper.
It really is. Think about the vulnerability of offering an idea.
Right.
If I offer a new line of copy and the room instantly fires back, worse, worse, neutral, worse, I literally do not have the time to get defensive. We are moving too fast.
You can't mount an argument to defend your bad idea.
My ego doesn't have time to bruise. And conversely, if my suggestion receives a chorus of better, 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 the entire room just validated my contribution in real time.
And the copywriter happily adopts it because it demonstrably leveled up the piece.
It completely eliminates the pontificators. Every single corporate meeting has that one person who loves the sound of their own voice.
Oh, yes. The one who wants to demonstrate how smart they are by dissecting the theory of the campaign.
This framework physically shuts them down. You cannot pontificate if your only legal options are to say better, worse, or neutral, or to offer a literal, finished sentence of copy.
It forces 100% of the room's cognitive energy into finding actionable solutions.
But this brings us to a highly complex challenge: human bias. Because even with these rigid rules, power dynamics still exist.
You have junior employees sitting next to senior executives.
How do you prevent the authority figures from accidentally or intentionally warping the results of the room?
This is where we dive into the mechanics of running the room, eliminating bias and forcing action. Let's talk about the CEO problem.
The Hippio effect.
Exactly. If the CEO or the highest paid person in the room is sitting in this peer review, everyone is naturally going to look to them, right?
Absolutely. It is a deeply ingrained psychological phenomenon, often called the jury room effect or the hippio effect, the highest paid person's opinion.
If the foreperson of a jury or the CEO of a company states their opinion first, the rest of the room will subconsciously or sometimes very consciously align their views to match.
The fear of standing out, the fear of contradicting the boss, or simply the assumption that the boss must know better, completely corrupts the raw data you are trying to gather.
If the CEO says, I give this headline a 3.8, the junior copywriter is not going to chime in and say, I give it a 1.5.
Never. They are going to magically realize it's a 3.5.
So how does the designated leader prevent this from ruining the 30-minute sprint?
The leader must actively orchestrate the voting sequence to dismantle that hierarchy. When the time comes to ask for the 1.0 to 4.0 numerical scores, the leader must explicitly, intentionally ask for the scores from the least powerful people in the room first.
So you start with the 22-year-old customer service rep.
Exactly. You call on the customer service rep first, then you ask the junior marketer, then you ask the copywriter.
And you deliberately make the senior executive or the master copywriter give their score absolute last.
This structural sequence guarantees that you extract raw, uncorrupted, authentic emotional reactions from the junior staff before they have any opportunity to be influenced by the heavyweights.
And if the room is still too intimidated, some advanced groups use blind paper ballots.
Or the leader makes everyone hold up fingers simultaneously, completely blinding the responses.
That is such a massive, universally applicable, practical takeaway. If you run a business, manage a team, or just want honest feedback on an idea, a design, or a pitch, never state your opinion first.
Never.
If you walk into a room and say, I think this new logo is fantastic, what do you guys think? You have already poisoned the well.
You have ruined the feedback loop. Always blind the responses or force the newest, least powerful person in the room to speak before you do.
You have to protect the integrity of the data. Now, the leader has another powerful psychological tool built into the rules to prevent a different kind of bias.
The saboteur.
In any group, you might have someone who is just having a terrible day.
Or perhaps they have a bit of an arrogant streak, and they decide to hand out a 1.5 or a 2.0 just to be contrarian.
Or to show how high their standards are. How do you handle someone who is just trying to tear things down?
The authors built a brilliant trap for the saboteur. The rules dictate that anyone who gives a low score specifically, anything under that 2.8 cutoff, is required by law to provide a positive, actionable copy suggestion during the improvement phase.
You are not allowed to drop a 1.5, cross your arms, and sit back while everyone else does the work.
If you rate the copy poorly, you are immediately on the hook to help fix it.
I love that. It forces skin in the game. It says, okay, you think it's broken? Great. You are now responsible for offering a specific sentence to repair it.
It immediately curtails frivolous low scores because people know they will have to back it up with hard creative work. It maintains the positive, constructive, forward-moving energy of the room.
Let's look at another transcript example from the book that illustrates this entire dynamic, the voting, the speed, the lack of ego in real time.
Let's do it.
The group is reviewing an article for an e-letter. The original headline submitted by the writer is, How Craigslist Can Help You Make Money.
We can actually role play how fast this goes. Imagine I am the designated leader, and you represent the participants in the room.
Okay, I'm ready.
We've just read the lead. I turn to the room and ask, on a 4-point scale, starting with our junior staff, how do you rate this headline?
And the room fires back in rapid succession. Participant 1 says 2.7. Participant 2 says 2.8. Participant 3 says 2.8. Participant 4 says 2.6.
The tabulator instantly punches the decimals in and announces the average is 2.74.
So as the leader, I note that 2.74 is right on the bubble. It technically misses a 2.8.
But depending on the strictness of the circle, we decide to accept it and try to elevate it. I announce, we will accept the draft. The floor is open for specific copy suggestions.
Immediately, a participant speaks up. They don't offer theory about how make money is an overused cliche. They just offer a suggestion.
They say, I suggest we change the headline from How Craigslist Can Help You Make Money to 10 Billion Reasons to Love Craig.
And as the leader, I absolutely do not ask them to explain their reasoning. I don't ask if 10 billion is mathematically accurate to Craigslist's revenue. I turn directly to the room and ask, better, worse, or neutral?
The room responds purely on instinct. Slightly better. Better. Better.
It receives universal approval. Because it received universal approval, the copywriter is now required to make the change.
We do not stop to debate if 10 billion reasons is too hyperbolic or if it obscures the core promise.
The collective gut reaction of the room determined that it is significantly more compelling than the original.
The change is locked in, and the timekeeper announces we have 20 minutes left to review the next paragraph.
The speed is breathtaking. But here is where the ultimate accountability measure comes into play, the 24-hour rule.
Once that 30-minute alarm rings, the meeting is over. The copywriter walks out of the room with their notes.
The rule states they have exactly 24 hours to implement all of the universally approved changes and deliver the final polished draft.
You might wonder, why 24 hours? If the heavy lifting is done, why not give them a week to let it simmer and perfect the prose?
Because feedback is entirely useless if it does not result in immediate, forceful execution. Think about the psychological state of the writer when they walk out of that 30-minute peer review.
The collaborative momentum is electric.
They aren't depressed. They're holding an incredibly clear, group-validated roadmap.
They know exactly which weak lines to cut, they have the exact replacement sentences, and they have the confidence of knowing their peers already approved the new direction.
If you give that writer a week, that electric energy dissipates. The isolation creeps back in.
They start overthinking the universally approved changes. They start second-guessing the room's gut reaction.
The ego, which was successfully suppressed during the meeting, begins to reassert itself.
They might say, well, the group liked 10 billion reasons, but I really preferred my original thought, so maybe I'll just change it back.
By locking in a ruthless 24-hour deadline, you capture the lightning in the bottle.
It is the defining difference between a dynamic, results-oriented creative process and a stagnant, bureaucratic one.
You evaluate the piece, you collaboratively fix the piece, and you ship the piece. No lingering.
So let's pull all of these moving parts together into our synthesis.
We have unpacked the F1 pit stop structure of 4 to 6 people.
The ruthless 30-minute clock.
The 1.0 to 4.0 emotional gut check scale.
The absolute ban on criticism in favor of specific copy replacements.
And the psychological mechanics of blinding votes and forcing 24-hour execution. What is the ultimate unifying takeaway for the listener?
If we tie all these seemingly disparate rules together, the soul of this chapter is a massive paradigm shift in how we view and utilize feedback.
The best, most efficient feedback systems in the world do not rely on subjective opinions, and they absolutely do not rely on destructive critiques.
They rely entirely on engineered, positive collaboration.
Engineered collaboration. That phrasing is perfect, because collaboration doesn't just happen naturally when you put people in a room.
Left to their own devices, people will default to tearing things down. You have to actively build a rigid container to force them to build things up.
Precisely. By deliberately stripping away the ego through fast voting, by outlawing theoretical arguments, and by forcing participants to provide specific, actionable solutions, you completely transform the environment.
You shift the terrifying burden of perfection. It is no longer the isolated writer standing alone in a room defending their self-worth against a firing squad of critics.
It becomes the entire group, working shoulder to shoulder under a ticking clock, co-creating a stronger, infinitely more compelling hook.
It turns critics into co-authors.
And when you fundamentally change that dynamic, you can literally transform a mediocre B-level draft into an A-level blockbuster in exactly 30 minutes.
But this entire system we've outlined today raises a massive looming question. The peer review is entirely exclusively focused on the headline and the first few hundred words. It is brilliantly designed to get the reader on the hook. But what happens next?
That is the perfect setup. Because what happens after you have utilized this system to build the perfect, irresistible hook, and your reader is finally on the line?
They are reading, they are engaged, but their natural skepticism means they are still secretly looking for any excuse to bail.
Next time, we are going to dive into the second half of the equation. We will explore the CUB critique.
A simple, ruthless method designed to hunt down and eliminate the confusing, unbelievable, and boring copy that is secretly killing your sales right before the finish line.
It is the essential framework for the body copy, and it is just as heavily engineered as the peer review.
I can't wait.
So, until then, the next time you ask a colleague or friend to read your work, do not ask them what they think.
Do not ask for their opinion.
Ask them for a number between 1 and 4. And if they dare to tell you that a sentence is too vague,
tell them to hand you the salt.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.